starts now.
Welcome, everyone. It is a Tuesday edition of American Sunrise, early edition. I'm Jake Novak. Thank you so much for joining us. A lot of news again overnight. This administration never sleeps, love it or hate it. We've already got President Trump very busy on his trip to Saudi Arabia. So I want to get right to it with independent investigative journalist Walter Kurt. He's also the guy behind the WC Dispatch on Substack. You should sign up for that and get his updates. They are fantastic. He does a lot of real investigative journalism work. I'm going to talk in a few minutes about how that profession has basically died, but Walter's a holdout and he's still doing real investigative journalism. So, Walter, let's start with the president who's already in Saudi Arabia now. And I think this is going to be an interesting trip. Now, there's a lot of rumors, or at least anticipation, that we could see some kind of big deal, maybe a wider peace agreement in the Middle East. That would be lovely. But I also think, Walter, there's going to be some business deals here for American businesses. Maybe some relaxations of tariffs or other protections against some American companies, and then maybe some announcements of big investments inside the U.S. It's going to be Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. What are you most looking for out of this trip from President Trump, Walter?
Well, there's a number of, obviously the investment deals sound amazing. I mean, there's rumors that it's going to scale up from, I think, from $600 billion to $1 trillion over the next 10 years from the Saudis. But I think the bigger thing to pay attention to would actually probably be from OPEC, right? I mean, I think if they can actually agree on a lower production rate, that would really boost American oil business in the Midwest in West Texas. So there's a number of things that we can really see out of this. A broader deal. I mean, I wrote about this yesterday. I think that it's very possible that we see a much broader deal between, Saudi, Qatar, Israel, and just broader the broader structure with Kuwait maybe and everything else. If you see an expansion of the Abraham Accords on this trip, that would be unbelievable. I think that was Trump's signature thing that he did in the Middle East his last term. And if he manages to expand that and isolate Iran even further without having to, do any more airstrikes or any more military action, that it's going to be incredible. But, it is, I think that him going over there now signals that he's got something big in the works, because that's just his style. Whether or not we actually see a full expansion of the Abraham Accords or if it's something completely different, I don't know. But I know that we will at least hear something good about the amount of investment and the lowering of tariffs. I think I'm really going to look and see if they make some sort of oil deal, though, because if we see a change in production and start to ramp up production in our own country for our own energy sector, I think that would be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny how things have changed. It used to be that we would be begging the Saudis to ramp up production and keep it going to keep our gas prices down. But with our efforts here in the United States under this administration to be friendly to drilling and to fracking and to things like that, we would like to see the price get a little bit higher overall, because it wouldn't affect our gasoline prices at the pump so much. Right now we're at $62 or $61 a barrel. We can go up to 70 and not really see much of a change. We can go up to 80 or 90 and actually not even see that much of a change at the gas pump for most of us here in the country. I'm not talking about California or Washington State or Connecticut, where it's all, where they jack up the prices with taxes. So it's interesting that you mentioned that. And I do think the Saudis had our best interests at heart, or the world's best interests at heart, when they've kept up the production high even after October 7th. On October 6th, 2023, U.S. light sweet crude was at $90 a barrel. So we're way down. When was the last time oil prices went down after a war? Well, speaking of that war, of course, the biggest news out of the Middle East over the last 24 hours is this incredible reunion video of Idan Alexander with his mom after 584 days in captivity. This is video of him getting out of the Red Cross car. And that was an amazing moment. And you saw at the beginning of the program his reunion with his mom. Walter doesn't look great. It looks like he has cigarette burns on his arm. I think we're going to find out some really bad stuff about his time in captivity. I'm glad he's back. But you know what? I wish I had 100 acres somewhere in the American Pacific Northwest to donate to him, because I'd never like to see him in a confined space ever again. What are your thoughts about that?
The video of him running and seeing his mother again was amazing, but it's just, I'm glad that he looks like he's alive and he looks like he's somewhat healthy. I mean, he does look like he may have been burned, and who knows what they did to him in there. And I'm sure he'll tell us, to be honest with you, but I'm just glad that when he's come out now, he doesn't look like he is, unable to walk, doesn't look like he is really, it looks like he's going to be okay. And I think that's the best news from all this. Seeing his mother's face was amazing. I think this is the best news we've seen in a while. At least now all of the only remaining American alive is out now. And I think that's good news. Everybody should be celebrating that. Of course, the left won't for some reason, but, it's a great thing that he's come home. And I love this video of his mother running in to see him. I can't imagine, it's been, I don't even, how long has it been? 500 something days. I mean, that's unbelievable to me.
Yeah. 584 days.
I'm sure
I'll
we'll
give
hear
the
a lot
left some
more.
credit. Yeah, the organized left, I don't know, but this video is so powerful, Walter. I know some people on the left who were very happy about it. Let's hope that maybe there is some humanity left. Let's talk about something else for a second. We'll get back to the Middle East in just a moment. But I want to talk about what President Trump did just before he got on that plane to Saudi Arabia, and that was the executive order to work on our prescription drug prices here in the United States. As I discussed yesterday, this is about making sure that if a drug company that's based here in the U.S. is charging basically another wealthy country, let's say an EU country, a much lower price for a drug, they have to try to make that same price over here. What I want to talk about here is this is something that the Democrats have been promising for a long time. They've been bashing the drug companies for years. This was not that hard to do. This was President Trump signing his name on an executive order. Why Joe Biden couldn't do it, why Bernie Sanders wasn't able to get something through the Senate. And it reminds me of how RFK Jr. last year, really almost exactly a year ago, accused top Democrats, including Bernie Sanders, of being in the pocket of Big Pharma. And the so-called fact checkers said, oh, no, that's not true. Bernie Sanders has not received donations from pharma companies. He's just received them from the CEOs and the top executives as personal donations. I mean, that's what passes. That's what passes for fact checking in America. Why that wasn't laughable to anyone who saw it, I don't know. But they literally said it was false to say that Bernie Sanders took money from Big Pharma because he only took it from the CEOs and the top execs, not from their official PAC. I mean, this is ridiculous. And I think that this is a moment where everyone can just see it's not that hard to do this, and how some people in political parties string issues along, don't solve them, because they like to have something they can yell about. They could have done this with abortion too, by the way, the Democrats. All the times they had a supermajority in Congress. They never codified it into American law. And the same thing with this pharmaceutical thing. And President Trump, look, he just doesn't care about that kind of stuff. He's just going to do it, isn't he?
Well, RFK said it best, actually, and it was when his announcement on this came out. He said, we actually have with President Trump a man of his word. And I think everybody, no matter what you think about Trump, you cannot argue anymore. There's not an argument to be had anymore by anybody that has any serious insight into anything, that Trump does not try, by at least attempt, to keep exactly what he says he's going to do. I mean, and it looks to me like this is just another example of that. Trump said he was going to do it on the campaign trail. He said he was going to work with RFK to figure out what they needed to do, and then he did it. And I think, this move, I don't understand why it was not done many, many years ago. Obviously, there's all sorts of competing interest from the big pharma companies, but I think you mentioned it before that the pharmaceutical companies didn't even really take that much of a hit in the stock market, because they'll just balance the prices out. It'll actually be a much more free and fair system for us. So the fact that we were paying these prices in the first place just shows that they didn't even, all it took was somebody to just tell them not to do it. It's just incredible that there's not been much pushback from them. I mean, my theory was that we were going to see one of the district court judges immediately block it, and I was taking bets on which judge it was going to be. But they've appointed themselves president. But I think even this would be pretty hard for them to defend. So maybe we won't see that. I don't know. But overall, it becomes pretty clear that Trump is going to try and keep his word on pretty much everything that he says, and I think that just needs to stop shocking people. And no matter what they say, I think he really does try and keep his word.
Yeah. By the way, the drug stocks didn't take a hit at all. They were up. They were up pretty nicely yesterday. So everything was up, but they started out down. And then when they saw the details of this, they actually had a nice rally too. Walter, I only have about a minute left, but it seems like everyone is still talking about this Qatari offer to give a 747-8 jet to the United States. We all know the story, to be converted into Air Force One. I'm not going crazy about this because Qatar floods so much money into the United States. This is actually nothing. I know some people have valued this gift at $400 million. This is an older 747. Ain't no way it's worth $400 million, but that's another discussion. But I'm wary of it. I don't like it, but I'm not gonna tear the walls down about it. But you feel that there's a potential positive here, don't you?
Well, it's the deal with this is that it doesn't seem to me that it's that bad of a deal. I think that what's really going on is that Qatar is really, really trying to figure out a way to help, to try and be part of a business agreement between all of these different countries. And if Qatar wants to have a seat at the table, I mean, they're not Saudi Arabia and they're not Israel. They don't have a tech sector. They don't have the major oil output that Saudi Arabia does. So what exactly do they have to offer? Well, if they can be great at diplomacy and be the intermediary between everybody else, then this is just another example of how they'd be able to do it. Like, well, look, we're willing to do work with you in any way that we possibly can. I think Trump has a lot more leverage over top of Qatar than people realize. I think that's the real deal. Trump has so much leverage over top of them that they're willing to, give him anything if it helps their position even a little bit. Now, whether or not this is actually that big of a deal, I don't think it is. The company that refurbished this plane is a Florida company. It's a Boeing jet. People are acting as if oh my goodness, the Qataris are planning to spy on Air Force One or something. That's a bit of an absurd, suggestion. To be honest with you, I think what really is going on here is that Trump is just furious at Boeing because they still, after 6 years, haven't been able to produce the jet, and they're now behind and over budget and everything else. I mean, Boeing's got so many problems with their DEI program that they axed last year. I think they're finally just now catching up to the point that they can even produce anything at all. So whether or not this actually goes through or not, I don't know. Based on the headlines, I would expect that Trump might back out of the deal at some point, but he probably wouldn't even announce that till he gets back from Qatar.
Right. And remember, this story got blown up over the weekend when there was so much other better news to cover. The Chinese trade deal, the drug pricing EO that was floated. That was a big reason why that got extra attention in the news media, because they thought this made Trump look bad, and that's what they wanted to make a big deal out of it. Walter Kurt, thank you so much for joining us. Check out the WC Dispatch on Substack. Everyone should read it, and I'll see you again real soon.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks for having me on.
All right, coming up, the Republicans are not looking to make the big cuts to Medicaid the Democrats were trying to scare us about, but they are looking to make some changes. I'll have the details of that in just a moment. And speaking of government aid, the Department of Homeland Security wants to know just how much Los Angeles County is forking over to illegal aliens in benefits and cash. It's illegal, by the way, but they're doing it, and LA isn't alone. American Sunrise Early Edition. We'll be right back. That's a live shot of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Usually when we show this intersection, it's a little bit busier. I guess people are getting up to work a little bit later than usual in Philly. But they don't have anything else to do because their hockey and their basketball teams aren't in the playoffs. Sorry, guys. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. Special welcome to those of you watching on Getter and Rumble and commenting. Again, this is not a passive news program. Hey, House Republicans have released their plan to alter Medicaid spending. I'm going to say alter because there were plans by some Republicans to do some real cutting, but when they put the plan on paper, they decided basically to scale down those plans. So here's what they're really looking to do, and I think this will be much more popular with the American people. First of all, they want to include some work requirements for people. If you're an able-bodied American and you can work, they want to have some work requirements before you can get some of the Medicaid benefits, just like if you were getting private health insurance at your employer. And they also want to do frequent eligibility checks, not just for people who may now be making too much money to get Medicaid, but also to make sure these are all legal American citizens, or people here legally, or at least getting the green card process. That's what they're trying to do. And they want to lower the share the federal government contributes. They don't want to lower, they do not want to lower the share that the federal government contributes to each state. That was going to be one of the things that they were threatening to do. The Democrats are making a big deal about getting people afraid of doing. So that's the deal with Medicaid right now. This is part of that big, beautiful bill that President Trump once passed. These are very, very minor changes. If the Democrats hold it up over this, it'll be scare tactics. You know that right from the start. All right. Let's talk about the fact that we have benefit issues when it comes to government benefits going to people who shouldn't get them. I'm not just talking about some Medicaid recipients. The Department of Homeland Security has launched a federal investigation into California's long criticized cash assistance program for immigrants. It's called CAPI, or CAPI, C-A-P-I. The probe zeroes in on allegations that undocumented immigrants, are you kidding, are getting federal benefits, namely Supplemental Security Income, SSI, to which they are not legally entitled. Now, folks, just to make this very clear, if you are going through the immigration process legally in this country, legally, green card process, etc., you are eligible, and I know some people have a big problem with this, but that is legal for those people to get on some federal benefits, a lot of them actually. But if you're an illegal alien, you're not supposed to get debit cards and other kinds of benefits that are literally carved out for American citizens. If LA County is the only county that's doing this, I'll eat my hat. Okay, we all know this is going on all over the country. So these other cities and counties better be worried if this continues. Hopefully they'll be more than worried and they'll just stop doing this. We cannot be giving money that's meant for our citizens that you and I pay into in our taxes to illegal aliens. We cannot do that. Not from those programs. You want to do something else humanitarian-wise? We can talk about it, but not this. Okay, tax day may have passed, speaking of taxes. But for millions of Americans, the real trouble is just beginning. If you missed the April 15th deadline or still owe back taxes, the IRS is ramping up enforcement. Every day you wait only makes things worse. With over 5,000 new tax liens filed daily and tools like property seizures, bank levies, and wage garnishments, the IRS is applying pressure at levels we haven't seen in years. Increased administrative scrutiny means collections are moving fast. The good news? There's still time for Tax Network USA to help. Self-employed or a business owner, even if your books are a mess, they've got it covered. Tax Network USA specializes in cleaning up financial chaos and getting you back on track fast. Even after the deadline, it's not too late to regain control. Your consultation is completely free, and acting now could stop penalties, threatening letters, and surprise levies before they escalate. Call 1-800-905-8000 or visit tnusa.com/RAV. You may have missed April 15th, but you haven't run out of options. Let Tax Network USA help before the IRS makes the next move. Coming up, another win for American auto workers. Mercedes has just made a nice announcement about local production. I'll have that story just ahead. American Sunrise Early Edition continues. believe that's the roof cam of our studio building in West Palm Beach. A little bit of a gray day. They tell me it was pouring all day yesterday in West Palm and a lot of Florida. We've had a beautiful day here in New York, and I think we got another one on tap. Let's see if we're going to have a beautiful day in the markets. Let's see where we're going to open right now for the stock market. And it's going to be down. Now, yesterday, look, folks, yesterday the Dow was up almost 1,200 points. Bigger gains percentage-wise for the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. That was one of the biggest rallies I've ever seen, and it was very broad-based. Almost everyone really was a winner. Even the pharmaceutical companies were a winner. But, we might have a little bit of give back. Actually, folks, I wouldn't make any bets this morning until 8:30. Because that's when we're going to get the inflation report, the April inflation report. It's expected to be no gain in inflation for April, basically no, and a 2.4% annual rate. So I think a lot of investors are just waiting for that. If we get a cooler inflation report, if inflation is lower, I think you could see another big rally. So just wait to see that. Look at gold. We're back at, we're up again today. Again, look at that. I still can't get used to a 3 handle, $3,200 per ounce. I know it got to 3,500 a couple of weeks ago, but wow. And now let's take a look at Bitcoin, because it's holding its gains a little bit better than the market. In fact, a lot better. It's up almost 2% at 103,000. So Bitcoin doing very, very well. And again, I think that's because people are making more money with the stock market. They've got more money to spread it around. And Bitcoin now has become more in line with where the Dow is going, which is kind of interesting. All right. How big was this massive stock rally yesterday? This is what I was talking about just a moment ago. It was really broad-based. Let's talk about how some of the many big winners, and I'm going to give you 3 big winners from 3 very different industries. First, let's take a look at Nike. Nike was up 7% yesterday. Why? Again, Nike, by the way, almost all their shoes right now being made in Vietnam. So Nike was up 7%. Ford, again, Ford and Nike couldn't be more different, I don't think, in the way that they, in what they sell. And Ford was up 3%. Ford is a very, very low price stock when you think about it. I'm not talking about low price when you consider how much it earns, but it's only trading at like $10 or $11 a share. It was up 3%. A 3% move for Ford is a big deal. And now Apple. Apple, again, very different from Ford and Nike. Apple shares were up 6% yesterday. These are big moves for stocks that don't usually move that in such a crazy way on any given day. So you got Nike, Ford, and Apple. They were all such big winners yesterday. And it's interesting to see this. This just goes to show they're not going to do this if they don't think that the tariff news and the trade news isn't real. They might be wrong, but they're not making a bet on something. They're not putting their money in something to lie to us. People don't do that with money, not even very rich people. All right, so what about all that money from the tariffs President Trump says America has been pocketing? This is an amazing, amazing number. This is an eye-popping number. The United States collected $7.6 billion more in customs duties. That's, the money they get from tariffs and other things like that in April than it did in March. So there was a massive jump. Now, there was also a record set. The amount of customs duties that we took in the month of April because of the tariffs was a record, an all-time record of $16.8 billion. Sorry, $16.3 billion. I'll take that $500 million. $16.3 billion. That's an all-time record, and it did go to cutting the deficit for the year. Again, who knows how long these tariffs are going to last, but this was a major, major revenue booster for the federal government. Now, for those of you watching this who are economically savvy, you say, wait a minute, we didn't get that money. We Americans are paying for it because we're going to pay higher prices for things. That may or may not be true. Remember, not everything that was tariffed had a price increase. A lot of companies from overseas took a hit. They're willing to take a hit for a month, 2 months, or 3 months. So for this first month of the tariffs, this could be a complete net gain and a complete net cutting of our deficit. So think of it that way. Speaking of government revenue, the big, beautiful bill President Trump has once passed by the end of this month has some fiscal hawks worried. They're worried that there's not enough tax hikes in it. And even some Republicans reportedly want to see a tax hike on the rich. Well, Florida Senator Rick Scott came on the Charlie Kirk show to throw some big cold water on that. Listen.
There's a lot of mixed opinions here. Some people say, hey, George H.W. Bush raised taxes. He was ridiculed for that. There's some nuance there that's largely missing. Do you think that we might end up seeing the top tax rate go from 37% to 40%?
No. First off, I've never, ever voted for a tax increase. I cut taxes 100 times while I was governor. We need lower taxes and we'll get more revenues. Now, we don't have a revenue problem. We have record revenues. Revenues are up. We have a spending problem. 53% increase in spending in 5 years when the population is up 2%. So we don't need new taxes. We need to figure out how do we balance the budget. Now, I think maybe some people, like somebody texted me this morning, they said, I would be okay if you raise my taxes if you balance the budget. Okay, well, they're not even talking about balance the budget. They're talking about reducing spending. We need to balance the budget, all right, and start paying down debt. That's what I did as governor. I paid off a third of the state debt when I was governor. And guess what? Interest rates kept coming down. Inflation, we didn't have issues with inflation. That's what we've got to do. So no new tax increases, none. Reduce spending. That's what we have to do.
And again, Senator Scott was on the Charlie Kirk Show. You can catch that show every Monday through Friday on Real America's Voice at noon Eastern Time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. Ever since Danica Patrick got into racing, I like saying, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. All right, Moving America. It's sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. ArtilleryTeaCo.com. Use promo code America's Tea for 25% off of your first order. Artillery Tea is all natural, whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free, and each tea bag can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. ArtilleryTeaCo.com, promo code America's Tea for 25% off your first order. Tariffs may not be around for much longer. But if these trade deals keep coming, maybe we'll want to keep them going. This has already encouraged more auto production in the U.S. The latest company to do so, Mercedes. Mercedes executives now say they will add production of its GLC SUV for North America at its plant in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Early this month, the German automaker said it would bring a new vehicle to the Alabama plant. Didn't say which one. Now we know it's the GLC SUV line. They say they want to deepen their commitment to the U.S. So here it is. There's still no dollar figure on how much they're investing to do this. But, this is only right. Tariffs or no tariffs. The SUV market for Mercedes is almost all in America. It is a huge American part of their market. They should have been making these things here in the first place, just to make things more convenient, frankly, for the American public and their customers. So here we go. This is yet another good result from the whole tariff stuff. And this is going to be something I think they're going to continue to do because this makes sense, tariffs or no tariffs. All right, I want to show you a picture of this SUV here. It's all from the air. These are aerial shots. Now, usually I wouldn't show you aerial shots of a car you can't even really completely make out. But this is the Toyota RAV4, folks. And again, the RAV4 may have, again, we're not going to know this for sure for a while. It may have been the #1 selling vehicle in America last year, eclipsing the Ford F-150. Either way, it was darn close. So this is a very, very popular vehicle. Some of you watching probably have one. If you don't have one, you'll be at a parking lot surrounded by them today, probably anyway. This is such a popular vehicle. So these are the teaser pictures that Toyota put out of their 2026 RAV4. They're teasing us with these aerial shots. But we see it in settings like the snow, within urban neighborhoods, and on a mountain pass. You can only do this with a very popular car. Otherwise, you really have to show the goods. You know what I'm saying? But this just goes to show how popular this vehicle is. And I can't get over it because it's something that has really changed the tradition in America. That F-150 was #1 for so long. Maybe it still is, but RAV4 came darn close at least. All right, and now this from Old School. Check it out.
Wow, that's really loud.
Yeah, thanks. Took the restrictor plate off, give the Red Dragon a little more juice. But let's keep that on the down low. It's not exactly street legal. Hey, Mike.
Right.
So what's up?
That was Hank the Tank. That was Hank the Tank from the movie Old School. Oh my God, one of the greatest characters in comedy movie history. Talking about cars that are street legal. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because the state of Colorado is about to make street legal what are known as Kai vehicles, mostly from Japan. Kai is short for Kai Jidosha. It's a Japanese term that translates to light vehicle. Some of you have seen some of these cars and even trucks, you can call them the trucks. They look like toys. They look like a wind-up toy. And they have been banned in a lot of states for a long time for obvious reasons. They don't look like they can take the wear and tear of the roads, let alone an accident. But this new law comes with some stipulations. These vehicles cannot be driven on roads with speed limits above 55 miles an hour. Well, that's a good idea. Most of them can't get that fast. They probably max out at 50. and especially on high grade roads. But Colorado's going to make this legal. I can't wait to see it. Also, one other stipulation: this will not become legal until July of 2027. So we got more than 2 years. But if you've ever seen these vehicles, you'll know they're pretty funny. But don't get into a car with Hank the Tank from Old School. That's my other bit of advice. All right, and now for a hat tip that I like to give for some good journalism. You've seen me on this program call out some bad journalism in the past, just yesterday, bad headlines, bad biases. I have to give a hat tips to some good journalism because I like this piece, and this is something that I think a lot of people are going to be discussing in America. It's a great op-ed in Motor1.com by Anthony Alaniz. It's called, quote, "The Surveillance State Will Kill the Car Enthusiast." This is an editorial about all the things that are in our cars and trucks right now and SUVs that are basically tattletaling on us. They're tattletaling on us to the government, to the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. They're tattletaling on us to the insurance companies. They are constantly nagging us about safety, telling us to slow down, beeping all the time, getting into our face. There are a lot of new cars that are doing this, and a lot of car reviewers are saying it's actually making the driving experience a pain in the neck. Now, I'm not saying we have to go like Hank the Tank and take the restrictor plates off of cars and go crazy with our cars on the streets. I don't want to see that either. But this nagging and tattletale stuff that's in the tech for new cars is absolutely turning a lot of people off who might buy extra cars just for the leisure aspect of it. You know, you see that sometimes in America. Someone has a car to go to work, someone has a car to do their errands, and they might have a sports car that they use on the weekends just for fun. If they don't make cars like this anymore, and if those fun cars turn out to be boring, then, you know, we're not going to want that. All right, coming up. President Trump's first official state visit of his second term has begun with his arrival in Saudi Arabia. Will the trip produce big news, big deals, or just big controversy? And this incident outside the Newark ICE detention center is apparently not an isolated incident. Are the Democrats really going to continue interfering with ICE arrests on the streets? We'll look more at this when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. It's Tuesday, May 13th. Here are some of this morning's top stories. President Trump arrives in Saudi Arabia to start his Middle East trip. It will mix defense, economic policy, some politics. It also could produce some major changes. I'm hoping for a big peace deal, but that's just me. We already got some major news from the region while President Trump was in the air. American-Israeli hostage Idan Alexander finally freed. He had that amazing reunion with his mother after 584 days in brutal Hamas captivity. You know, it's not just deportations. The Trump administration is also now looking into the debit cards and other benefits given by Los Angeles County to illegal aliens. This could be start of a national trend. And it's still not a done deal, but President Trump says it would be stupid not to accept Qatar's offer of a 747-8 jet and to turn it into Air Force One. But no matter what happens, Qatar's massive network of influence funding has been exposed more than ever before. American Sunrise Early Edition continues now. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. Special welcome to those of you on Getter and Rumble who are not only watching on those platforms, but commenting. I appreciate all the comments. Thank you so much. Let's get right to it. Joining me now is Steve Abramowitz. He is the founder of the Heartland Journal and the Heartland Journal podcast. Steve, let's take all of these stories from today from the Heartland's point of view. I want to give you some brand credibility here. Let's start with, what does the American Heartland have to gain, maybe, from this Trump visit to the Middle East? Because I don't think President Trump is doing this just for the headlines. I think that there are some things that people in the heartland of this country should be watching very closely when it comes to this trip.
Yeah, I mean, it's unquestionable that in his first term, he was very much a friend of Israel and helped quite a bit with something amazing. Should have got the Peace Prize for it, called the Abraham Accords. And there was a lot of talk about Saudi Arabia joining that before his second term. That never happened, fell apart, because it didn't happen. And now here's an opportunity to pick that back up together and maybe, just maybe, create a lot of peace and prosperity in that neck of the woods. And he's working with, well, the wealthiest Emirates of the neighborhood to try to get something we've never seen in our lifetime. And that's a kinder, gentler, more engaged in the world Middle East. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. Not only that, but I mean, it's people in the heartland who send so many of our troops into the military, so many of our soldiers and sailors and things like that. It would be nice if there's not even a possibility that they ever have to go into wars on foreign soil. And I think if we get peace deals like the Abraham Accords, which, by the way, I was involved in a little bit of the post-implementation. That's a real peace deal. For those of you who think it's just a piece of paper and the people aren't really interacting, I can tell you very honestly that Emiratis and Bahrainians and Israelis are interacting in more than just kumbaya sessions, which would be nice too, because Israel doesn't have that with Egypt, but they're also making business deals. It's really a real deal. If we can get that with Saudi Arabia or one or two other countries in the region, that would be wonderful, wonderful for America's young boys and young women in the military. They would have one less thing to worry about. Steve, let's talk about the heartland of America's longstanding belief that we leave no man behind. A lot of us saw American-Israeli Adon Alexander reunite with his mom yesterday. How do you think Americans feel about that when they see that? I don't think there's a dry eye in the house, even among some of the lefties. How about you?
Well, I was going to say all but the lefties. I'm thrilled. I think it's great. I do believe that the Heartland loves this. It was exactly like bringing back Tennessee native from the International Space Station, where we had to actually rely on Elon Musk to do it because Boeing wouldn't. And so I'm not thrilled to hear that Trump wants Qatar to join the Abraham Accords. Qatar, they've sponsored al-Qaeda affiliates in Syria, so our young boys do have to fight enemies. But if there's going to be peace in our time, then I think it's actually fantastic. And as far as the Air Force One deal, another slap at Boeing. If they can't make it, somebody has to. And if Qatar makes a good product, let's take it, especially since it's free. It's a gift to the United States of America, the Army, not Trump himself personally. So, I never like doing business with terror outfits, but if it brings peace and reconciliation to Israel after 50 years, I pray it works out okay. And it is a luxury jumbo jet that they say is going to be the new Air Force One. That means Boeing has to get their act together and do better business, hire better, make better product. Doors don't fly off in the middle of the sky. That would be a good thing for the American manufacturing industry going forward, a little competition.
Yeah. And I understand that the cup holders on the plane are enormous. I like those big. Okay, I'm just kidding. Steve, I know the American people in the heartland and elsewhere. We had a couple of questions about good things, peace on earth, a returned hostage, maybe a free airplane. Unfortunately, I got to insert some negativity right now because I know that the folks in the heartland and elsewhere in America are not supporting this trend. Now there's another local politician in trouble for interfering with an ICE arrest of an illegal alien, local law enforcement getting involved. This was in Worcester, Mass, a councilwoman in Worcester, Mass. And by the way, the local police union is now suing her over this because, she really put those officers in danger. Now, we have the video of that incident. Here we have this video of this incident in Worcester. Stephen, this is the hill that the Democrats are going to continue to die on. I mean, we saw that thing in Newark just before the weekend. Now we have a councilwoman in Worcester basically telling everyone, hey, let's get in between the cops and these people they're trying to arrest, which is a very, very, very dangerous thing to do. I can't believe that this is going to get them any net gain in votes anywhere in America, not in Berkeley and not in Davenport, Iowa. That's what I think. I'm sure you feel the same way, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, I mean, the radical party of AOC and Crockett are walking off of a cliff, driving the car off the cliff without tapping the brakes. And, as an observer, it's really been something to watch. I mean, Trump in his first 100 days had done so much. I mean, just this weekend, he announced a trade deal with China, brokered an in-person meeting between Ukraine and Russia, helped stop a potential war between India and Pakistan. Have we forgotten already? Announced an end to big pharma U.S. profiteering, and he got the final American hostage released by Hamas. And Monday, just yesterday, he got a judge to allow sharing between Social Security with DHS and Doge, even with Congress out of session. So basically what he's done is he's completely freaked out the furthest left bastion of the Democratic Party. And, he walked the party of JFK and Clinton from some of the stupidest ideas ever, to fund the police and chop off healthy girl and boy parts with, mobile abortion clinics at their convention, to now willing to violently defend and go to jail for attacking ICE agents to keep gangbangers from being deported to Venezuela. It's really something to see. And I think the midterms may just be a blowout for Republicans. Historically, that's not how it goes. The party in power loses seats. I think this is going to do it for them. And no wonder they taken 80 days off this year. That's the same party that voted 0 on the Lincoln Riley Act, right? So really insane with Hakeem Jeffries in charge and Jasmine Crockett, their loudest spokesperson. And remember, Senator Chris Van Hollen, he traveled all the way to El Salvador to try to free an MS-13 wife beater and drink margaritas with him. I'm sure the folks in Maryland love that. A very leftist state, but they can't love the party of MS-13 and spousal abuse.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like they're taking so much bait. It's incredible to me. But this is what happens, I think, when you have a party, and the Republicans, I think, were guilty of this during much of President Obama's term as well. If you have a party that just identifies with being against a person, anti-Trump in this case, they're going to make all these kinds of foolish decisions because all they have to, the only equation in their mind is if Trump is doing it, we're going to be opposing it. And even if it's, again, violent, criminal, illegal aliens, even if it's something like forcing girls to undress in front of boys in a high school locker room, that's the logical end of this. And again, they've got to get something that they're for. And actually, I think specifically someone that they're for. And not really all about identity politics and personality politics. But if they don't have a candidate to start rallying around by the end of this year, I think they're in serious trouble, or they'll make more mistakes like this because they're just anti-Trump. Now,
well, Eden Alexander
personalities. Go ahead.
I was going to say Eden Alexander is a perfect example, right? A Jewish American who was held hostage, who's freed. They could have easily rallied around that and said, "This is amazing. Thank you, Trump. You're a great liberator. You're a great negotiator. You were able to save an American hostage." But no, it's sad. Actually, the Republicans have to be happy and celebrating that Trump freed another American hostage. But of course, the Democrats are silent on that. Anything good Trump does, they have to take the exact opposite position. They don't have to, but they do it instinctively, even if they look like idiots. I'm sure they will come out today saying lower drug prices is somehow a bad thing since Trump did it, even though Bernie has been railing against it for years and years and years. Used to call that triangulation when Clinton did it, taking the Republican talking points and making them his own. But now Trump actually does things, and the Democrats don't know what to do since they can't use it in a campaign ad anymore if he solves it once and for all.
Yeah. Steve, I'm running out of time. I wanted to get to your Heartland Journal awards. Can you tell people where they can find them so that they can read about the people that you've awarded for being great Americans?
Yeah, thanks. Heartlandjournal.com. We've got the podcast there. We've got all the news that the mainstream won't put out for you on a daily basis, plus an e-newsletter. And we had an awards ceremony last month. Readers voted and picked the best male singer, female singer, best male actor, best male actress. And the awards are going to be delivered this month. And it was very well received. And we're very proud of it.
Exciting. We'll talk more about that maybe after the awards. Thank you so much for joining us, Steve Abramowitz, the Heartland Journal and the heartlandjournal.com and the podcast. Thank you so much. Coming up, David Brody's going to join me, and we're going to talk about the pitfalls of dealing with Qatar, whatever you want to call it. We'll be right back. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. You're looking at West Palm Beach, Florida. Looks like the clouds have cleared up a little. I understand it was raining very heavily yesterday. David Brody joins me right now. And David, I don't want to talk too much about this jet gift that everyone's talking about so much. I think everyone knows the details of it. I'm on record. I don't love it. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But what I do think is very, very concerning, and I'm hoping that I'm wrong about this, is that Qatar is a country that basically, I know it produces oil, but really, David, their number one product is funding. Sometimes that funding is for something that's very benign. A lot of the time it's for stuff that's not so good. They help terrorist organizations. That's been documented. In fact, there's been a big study about this, about how Qatar has to make a choice between whether it's going to be on the good side of the world or the bad side of the world. They fund a lot. They basically act as a clearinghouse sometimes for Iranian money. And that's very, very troubling. Here's my one hope. I do think that there's a chance that if there's enough pressure put on them, either by President Trump or other folks, that Qatar could possibly come to the realization that trying to dance at everybody's wedding, because that's what they like to do. They want to be on the good side sometimes, and they want to be on the bad side sometimes. If they can be told that they can't get away with that anymore, that everyone sees through this, then maybe we can start dealing with them in a more honest and open fashion. For now, though, I'm very, very, very cautious. How about you?
No, Jake, look, let me do the disclaimer. I have said so many positive things about Donald Trump. I love MAGA through and through. This is ridiculous. Jake, this is insane. What he's doing here is just plain wrong. It's just as simple as that. They fund the Muslim Brotherhood. They used to. They fund Hamas, still do. I mean, Jake, I can just go down the list. He's lost Laura Loomer on this, Jake. He's lost Ben Shapiro. Who cares about all of that? The point is that from a moral perspective, this is wrong. From a financial perspective, I get it, right? It's an Excel spreadsheet for Trump, right? It's a great deal. Why would I turn down a plane? Like, I get it in some sort of benign universe. But how about morality here? How about some morality of Trump in 2017 came out and called out Qatar, call them whatever you want. All I know is that they were funding radical Islamic terrorism. And Trump's own words, go back and watch the clip in 2017. You know the deal, Jake. He called him out. Why are we accepting a $400 million plane from guys that are okay with radical Islamic terrorism? Jake, seriously, walk me back down from the ledge. Explain it to me. And if someone's going to explain the financial incentive and this and Qatar, we're trying to work with them and everything. Okay, I get the geopolitical stuff, right? I get it. But at some point, you have to have a line in the sand. Qatar, they are not good guys. Okay, and this idea that, and I understand it's alliances and they're going to put $200 to $300 billion in U.S. investments, and Trump sees the Excel spreadsheet. I got that. But I'm sorry, the morality aspect, the radical Islamic terrorism stuff, trumps, so to speak, pun intended, all of that, Jake. And someone convince me I'm wrong. Please, convince me I'm wrong. Jake, convince me I'm wrong. And MAGA doesn't want to talk about it. Hang on one second. MAGA doesn't want to talk about it because if it was Joe Biden getting a plane from Qatar, we'd be all over that, Jake. If Biden got a plane from China or any other authoritarian regime, we'd be all over it.
We would be. And by the way, let me preempt all the bots and the other people saying, well, what about all the money AIPAC? Listen, folks, if you said there was no more funding anymore from both sides, I'd take it. Qatar spends 10, 20, 100 million times more money in our elections and other things like that than Israel or AIPAC. So don't start with me. Well, American Sunrise is starting right now.
American Sunrise is a great way to start your morning. Join us Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We've got the news of the day and some compelling interviews that you don't want to miss. Here's what you missed from yesterday. Look, there's a lot to talk about this morning. We want to start right off with President Trump set to sign a new health care executive order. That's going to happen in about 90 minutes. We, of course, will bring it to you live the moment it happens. Posting on Truth Social, President Trump writing, our country will finally be treated fairly and our citizens' health care costs will be reduced by numbers never, ever seen before and never thought of before. Additionally, on top of everything else, the United States will save trillions of dollars. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again.
What I think President Trump has done in his first and second terms has just been phenomenal. This one, guys, this is price controls. This is price controls. This is federal price controls. This is anti-free market, technically.
I know he tried this in his first term, so we've got to see if he will have success in this. There's going to be some pushback, let's be honest. You are talking about price controls. Ultimately, we want Americans to pay less for prescription drugs.
Some of us are old ourselves, seem to be excited about this, particularly if you've got a cabinet full of prescription medications that you're paying an arm and a leg for.
U.S. officials have announced a trade deal with China. Oh, yeah, there's that. Have we told you about that yet? No. That has been reached. Both sides say they will lower tariffs on the other for the next 90 days, each side dropping tariffs by 115%.
The Democrats can't find anything, right? So what they have to talk about is instability or uncertainty or chaos. Well, now we see step by step that every time President Trump addresses a problem, in going back to the art of the deal, he makes progress.
Zelensky says he's agreed to meet with Russian President Putin on Thursday. It's currently, by the way, unclear if Putin will actually be at the meeting. Zelensky says that Ukraine is awaiting a lasting ceasefire from diplomacy and doesn't want, quote, excuses from Russia.
The mass of people in Russia, the mass of their military resources is almost too unbearable for Ukraine. And I'm not sure they have much longer under the status quo. And so this negotiation, I think, is the best thing for Ukraine, and all world leaders should be encouraging it to happen in Turkey this week.
We're understanding is coming in right now as we speak. Live pictures. This is Reem Israel. It's the hostage release. This is Eden Alexander the American dual citizenship.
We are all supporting Israel, and Israel has made clear we are not going to let the Gaza Strip or anywhere else become a new ground for a new base for a terrorist organization.
All right, just ahead on American Sunrise, President Trump signed an executive order aimed at lowering prescription drug prices. But how did Trump respond to claims of price control? We have those comments for you. Plus, this is a big week for the budget reconciliation package as 3 of the major committees begin markups. When can we expect to see a deal? And finally, President Trump is calling to hire more agents to help with deportations. How will this impact the situation at the southern border? We have those stories, so much more. American Sunrise, you guys. We start right now.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Gina. We are live with you from the Palm Beaches. Let's bring in David Brody. He's in Washington, D.C., and we have T. Bates. He's in our Denver newsroom. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Gina.
Dr. G. David, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see both of you. Guys, there's a lot of news happening right now. I really haven't slept much because President Trump touched down in Saudi Arabia about 2 o'clock Eastern time. And so, of course, I had to watch the landing. I mean, come on, I'm that much of a nerd. I had to watch President Trump touching down there in Saudi Arabia, and he immediately got to business. Went there to meet with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. But I guess, guys, the bigger story is that during this 3-country tour of the Middle East, the president, will be also talking about the situation in Gaza, the continuously unfolding situation in Gaza. And I think to some degree overshadowing the war, at least at this moment, is the release of Eden Alexander. He, of course, is now reunited with his family. And in case you've missed it, ladies and gentlemen, here is that moment. Check it out.
I think you're going to see a tremendous cut. I don't think. I mean, I know you're going to see it in Medicaid and Medicare. That cut will be massive because drugs are 50-60% of the cost. So Medicaid costs are going down and Medicare costs are going down because of what we're doing.
All right.
Today.
We apologize. That obviously was not the clip that we wanted to play. We're going to try to get that clip queued up for you.
That wasn't Eden Alexander. That was President.
Or his mother. Or his mother. It was neither of them. But I guarantee you, folks, we're going to try to show it to you. Here you go. That squeal is what I really wanted you to hear. That I'm not going to even try to recreate it, but I think any parent can relate to that, Dr. Gina.
Definitely. Yeah, get my tissue already, and we just started the show. No, I mean, anyone who's been separated from their child for any amount of time, for any reason, can relate to that feeling of just holding them again. Can't even imagine being that mother. And, wow, the download they have to do, David.
Yeah. Someone bring Gina Kleenex, please, stat on aisle 4.
Me too.
But, yeah. That it's just beautiful to see. And I do want to quickly go back to the Saudi Arabia situation, because that's a big deal with Trump, obviously, there. To be clear, this is all about economics, pretty much. I mean, they're going to talk about Gaza, obviously, but that's not going to be the headline. The headline is going to be specifically economic issues, because Saudi Arabia is going to invest a lot of money. There are going to be a lot of deals made. Iran is a big deal over there, obviously, and Saudi Arabia is a counterweight to all of that. You know, that's the key. That's why Saudi Arabia is so important, because they can't stand Iran, and that's why Trump has got to solidify things over there, which he will, and he has, and they have a good relationship, and the oil market obviously is huge too. So lots of things to discuss as we move forward.
By the way, David and Dr. Gina. President Trump, before we get to the Bible verse, just want to kind of tease this, that President Trump is expected to speak there in Saudi Arabia here within the next hour or so. The moment he takes the podium, we're going to try to take you there live so you can hear his remarks again on the first leg of his 3-country tour there in Saudi Arabia. But Dr. Gina, I think all of that does set the stage for our Bible verse.
Absolutely. And today it's from 1 Peter 5, verses 6 and 7. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you. Love that one. Well, I say that every day. I love them all. That's the problem. Yes. Or something. Anyway, President.
You love the Bible.
What'd you say?
You love the Bible.
Well, yeah. I mean, I hope that's not trite, but yes, absolutely. President Trump signed an executive order, you guys, aiming to lower the cost of prescription drugs, as I mentioned in the open. President Trump says prices will come down quickly and Americans will pay the same price as other developed countries. Imagine that. Trump also responded to claims this order is price control. Take a listen.
I think you're going to see a tremendous cut. I don't think. I mean, I know you're going to see it in Medicaid and Medicare. That cut will be massive because drugs are 50-60% of the cost. So Medicaid costs are going down and Medicare costs are going down because of what we're doing today. And there's no, it's not like, oh, gee, well, maybe it won't happen. It's going to happen because the other countries have no choice. Now, the drug companies are going to have to say, listen, if you don't pay more, we're not going to give you the drug, and they're willing to do that. So that's it. They have to, we have to equalize.
Mr. President, what is price controls?
Say it.
How do you respond to the fact that this...
It's not price control. No. What was price control is before. If you want to talk about it. Price control is what they were doing. They were making us pay. They set a price, and they said, here's what we're going to pay. And anything else, charge America. Because at that time, they had a very stupid president, and it really went crazy during the last 4 years. And remember this, the Democrats are the ones that allowed this to happen. They were the ones that were the protector of this pricing system.
For more, we want to bring in RAV Chief White House Correspondent Brian Glenn. Brian, the question for everybody, if this really happens, I can't even imagine the impact this will have, not just on our health, but on our economy, on morale in America. I could see this being really the biggest thing President Trump has done to date, and I can see the ramifications echoing into years of this. What do you think? How long will it be before the American people can feel it? Because when it comes right down to it, that's what it really is all about.
Yeah, good morning. I think President Trump was speaking on behalf of millions of Americans that have complained about this very topic forever. I can hear right now Big Pharma, the lobbyists, running away from D.C. That's exactly what he's pushing out. And from what I've been told, Thune in the Senate is already a hard no on this. And so where's Bernie Sanders? Where's Elizabeth Warren? They should be parading around the White House right now. This is what they've always stood for. This is what Democrats fight, Big Pharma. Finally, President Trump coming out with his executive order to lower prescription drug prices that affects everyone. This is awesome. I don't think it's price control at all. I think it's negotiations on behalf of the United States of America to make sure that we get the best and fair price.
Brian, bottom line here, this is all targeted at making sure that Americans save a little bit of money, particularly those of us who are on prescription drugs. In the meantime, on Capitol Hill, Senate, not just Senate lawmakers, but Republican lawmakers in particular, are trying to show that they can be good stewards of our tax dollars, which brings me to this Truth Social post from President Trump. He writes, this week, the Republicans are meeting in the Tax, Energy, and Agriculture committees on major pieces of the One Big Beautiful bill. Republicans need to unify behind their highly respected chairman, Jason Smith, Brett Guthrie, and Glenn G.T. Thompson. Remember, these are men that truly strive to do what is right for America. The Democrats, on the other hand, want to destroy our country. And as I was kind of mentioning here, Brian, 3 major committees are starting the markup process today. A couple of weeks ago, we thought this was going to be a slam dunk, but it seems that that's not the case, that there have been some challenges and some bumps along the way here in the conversation. You're shaking your head. Do you disagree, or am I on point there?
No. No, I agree with you. I don't think the biggest enemy right now of this are Democrats. It's our own party. You've got people like Mike Lawler from New York City, who is a no on this so far because it doesn't have enough SALT, state and local tax. Now, what was been proposed was 10% on the board. Then they came back. He wanted 10,000. He wanted 100,000 on the bill. They came back with 30, and he's still a no on this. So it's our own party that's kind of holding us up on getting everything done in time on this big, beautiful bill. But at the end of the day, I do think that all Republicans come to the table, will get behind all of this. It'll go through rules, it'll get approved, and we'll be able to deliver it for the American people. But I've been screaming from the rooftops for over a couple months now about this. We need to get it done. And if you look at the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, I want our viewers to understand this. Through the Senate reconciliation, they cannot touch Social Security. So what they're doing is they're going to give the American people a $4,000 couple credit or a $2,000 single credit to offset the no tax on Social Security, because by their laws, they cannot touch Social Security. So I do feel confident that it will be passed, but the Senate will approve this. But in terms of all the other stuff, Thune being a no on prescription drugs, basically, making it more affordable for millions of America, this is a result, Terrance, of Big Pharma, the donors, the lobbyists coming in there to make sure that we keep those drug prices nice and high, those profit margins big and fat, so that they get rich, the American people have to struggle. Meanwhile, other countries, developed countries in the world, they pay less for their product, but we pay more. That's the American way in terms of what the Big Pharma wants you to understand and pay.
And it's those PBMs within the system that are really bilking the money from Americans. It's good that this is a nice start to exposing that. Brian, it seems like Republicans are negotiating against themselves. I don't understand why we're negotiating against our own bill. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. It's one thing if you're negotiating against the Democrats because you need their votes, but we don't. So just pass the big, beautiful bill. Brian Glenn, always enlightening. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, guys. Good morning. Thank you.
Coming up, we check out the hottest headlines from the RAV newsroom with T. Bates. And later, a federal judge is warning that President Trump's mass deportations could infringe on the rights of Americans. How is that possible? We're going to take a look on American Sunrise right after this.
This news break is brought to you by AMAC, Association of Mature American Citizens.
Dallas, Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas, except your tax bill. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Coming up, DHS, 20,000 more agents on the ground. That's what President Trump wants. Will he get it? How will that work? He's ordered it. Let's see how it plays out. First, though, before we talk about that, we're going to first then go to Terrance Bates. I know him. I've heard of him. I think he's on this program, and he's standing by with the latest headlines from the Real America's Voice newsroom, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
President Trump is in Saudi Arabia right now. He touched down early this morning while you were still sleeping. The commander-in-chief has already met with the Saudi crown prince during this first leg of his three-country Middle East tour. He'll also visit Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. Among the issues on the agenda for the president this week are dismantling Iran's nuclear program, ending the war in Gaza, and addressing concerns about oil prices. There's also reporting out this morning that President Trump may go to Turkey at the end of this trip if he thinks his presence may be needed in order to complete a ceasefire deal between Russia and Ukraine. Presidents Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky are slated to meet in Istanbul on Thursday. We, of course, are continuing to monitor this developing story as both leaders are expected to show up for talks. In other foreign policy developments out of the White House, dozens of white South Africans are on U.S. soil this morning after being granted refugee status. President Trump says the group has faced egregious discrimination in South Africa. The country's government denies that claim, but the Department of State says the group was, quote, carefully vetted before leaving Johannesburg and touching down in the nation's capital.
Because they're being killed, and we don't want to see people be killed. Now, South Africa leadership is coming to see me, I understand, sometime next week. And, we're supposed to have I guess a G20 meeting there or something, but we're having a G20 meeting. I don't know how we can go unless that situation's taken care of, but it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about.
The administration and its allies, like South African-born Elon Musk, allege that South Africa's white minority have faced discrimination by the country's post-apartheid government. They also say the treatment includes a controversial law that allows the government to take private land under certain circumstances. Happening today, more House committees are starting the budget markup process, which is the next major step in the budget reconciliation process. Among the expected and more high-profile changes are changes to Medicaid, including work requirements and more frequent eligibility checks on beneficiaries. The Agriculture, Energy, and Commerce departments, or committees, as well as the Ways and Means committees, are scheduled to mark up their portions of the government funding bill today. While the House is on the clock today, the U.S. Senate will be keeping a close eye on the happenings across the U.S. Capitol, as Senate Republicans will likely need to revise the House draft in order to avoid a potential filibuster that could delay passage of the measure. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'll have more headlines coming up here in just a little bit, including President Trump cooking up a brand new way to try and speed up deportations. So, what's he considering now? Next, though, a Texas sheriff says the situation at the southern border could be shifting to a new hot spot. He'll tell us where it is next. Right now, though, a quick look at this day in history. It was on this date in 1981 that Pope John Paul II was shot and critically wounded by a Turkish terrorist at St. Peter's Square. The pontiff survived the attack, and since his death has even been named a saint. His would-be assassin was apprehended immediately and eventually sentenced to life in prison. More American Sunrise coming your way after this break.
West Palm Beach, another beautiful day down there. It's rainy and yucky and disgusting in the deep state, which is true both from a weather perspective and a moral perspective. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. All right, so President Trump is calling for at least 20,000 new officers to help with the deportations of illegals. Trump says he wants to make it as easy as possible for illegal aliens to leave the country. ICE has roughly 6,100 deportation officers and more than 750 enforcement removal assistants, the old ERAs. This comes after the Trump administration offered illegal aliens $1,000 to get out, to self-deport. For more, let's bring in the sheriff of Terrell County, Texas, Thaddeus Cleveland. Sheriff Cleveland, great to have you with us on the show. So what's your sense in how this is going to work? I mean, I'm curious how local offices like yourself work with DHS now, and is more help needed? Because, look, the border is much better, but the interior is really the big problem here.
Hey, good morning, David. Great to be back on Real American Voice with you guys. And no, you're exactly right. When we look at the border, of course, I'm in a border county, and we have a Border Patrol station here, the station I retired out of. And I'd like to say we probably have one of the best relationships along the southwest border, and we definitely rely on each other. The Border Patrol station here has 91 miles of border, but there's only about 50 Border Patrol agents to patrol that. So that's where our office, as well as state resources, come into play. But to your question specifically, the president's, they're doing their homework. They're bringing all kinds of new thought to removing people from the interior, and we definitely need more agents within ICE that carry out those deportations and removals. Look, it's just like the Border Patrol was years ago, undermanned, understaffed, and the 3,000 or so agents that they have, I forget that number exactly. They truly need the assistance to help as we've continued to focus on the border. Now it's time to focus on that interior and those criminal aliens.
As you try to discourage illegal immigration, you're not only fighting the cartels, you're also fighting the courts. I'd like to bring your attention to this political headline, which says, judges warn Trump's mass deportations could lay the groundwork to ensnare Americans. That's the headline. Of course, a number of judges on the federal level have ruled against the use of the Alien Enemies Act and other deportation efforts. How do you see all of this ultimately playing out, and how much more difficult does it make your job? Do you find yourself second guessing what you're doing in support of the federal government, thinking I might end up in court over all of this?
You've got it exactly right. And I've been saying for the last 4 years, that the Biden administration fought harder against the state of Texas than they did the cartels. We've been challenged here in the state of Texas for the last 4 years. We've got a governor that's done some great things and continues to support us along the border. Those of us that are the sheriffs that are actually getting involved in the border fight, because not all sheriffs are, and that's disappointment. But again, to the Aliens Enemies Act, the new policies, I think the biggest point here is that President Trump is continuing to do all he can do and has done a tremendous job. Now it's time for Congress to act. Now's the prime opportunity. Apprehensions are such a low. Congress needs to act, solidify some of these policies, and make it in a manner that another administration can't come in and just unravel all the accomplishments we've had in the last 4 months.
Sheriff, you sent new video to our team, and you say that you think the border situation is shifting. Can you tell us where the next hot spot will be?
Yes, ma'am. So again, I spent the last 11 years of my 26 border career right out here in the Big Bend sector. I was the patrol agent in charge of the Sanderson station. And historically and currently, we're the busiest station between Del Rio, Texas to El Paso, Texas. That's about a 600-mile swath of border, which also is known as the Big Bend Border Patrol sector, the Big Bend region. We haven't received, because we haven't had as much of a threat as those other locations, so we haven't received the resources that other places have. So as we continue to see resources up and down river from the Big Bend region, out in El Paso, down in South Texas, of course, Arizona, California, New Mexico, it's going to be what we've seen historically along the border. They're going to go to the weakest point. And I predict, and we've been predicting for years, that the Big Bend sector will be that next hot spot. It's rough and tough out here to cross, but the last 4 years definitely showed that we were vulnerable. We saw at one point a 417% increase in apprehensions, a 467% increase in gotaways, and that was the last year Trump compared to fiscal year 2022. So, and I don't say that because President Trump was a president then. That was a year that we had just a normal year. But I will also say is that the videos and pictures that you're showing, I don't just get on the news to talk about the border. I still get out there and work with our Border Patrol agents. We don't have a crime problem in Terrell County. What we have is a border security problem.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, I'm curious to get your take on this latest not proposal. I mean, the DHS basically is saying $1,000 to self-deport. They want to give illegal aliens $1,000. What do you make of that? Or not even specifically you, but just kind of like what's the word on the street down there in terms of that? I mean, is that really going to work? And there's a lot of folks that would say, well, wait a minute, hold on. We don't want to reward people for crossing over the border and then give them $1,000 to get out of here. I know it'll save taxpayers money, but I'm just curious what the force down there is thinking.
Well, first and foremost, I think it was kind of a genius idea to repurpose. No telling how many millions of dollars that the Biden administration utilized on the CBP One app, that we've repurposed it to the CBP Home app. That's a good thing. It's just another pathway, another tool that President Trump has given us along the border to help make the border more safe, secure, as well as ICE in the interiors. But I don't think we will see, a tremendous amount of people taking advantage of it. But, even one person that utilizes it makes America more safe and secure. And, I support it. I'm not sure how much, traction we'll get out of it. But again, it's another great thing that this administration has put towards border security and interior enforcement.
Sheriff, I can't let you go without asking you this. Since you said it, it's kind of been burning in my spirit. You said that right now, the Big Bend region of the border, that's kind of your area, is vulnerable. I think that was the word you used, vulnerable. And you said that you don't have the resources. So what specific resources would you need to secure that section? Are you talking about something like a wall, or what do you need?
Man, that's a great question, and I didn't expound on that too much. So what we have out here with the Rio Grande River and the deep canyons of the Big Bend, some of them that reach up to 2,000 feet, we have what I like to call a God-made barrier. But like a regular fence, it can still be, crossed. So what we need out here is the right combination of some technology, whether it's radars, cameras, of course. No matter how much technology or infrastructure you have, if you don't have a man or a woman with a badge on their chest that can go out there and make those apprehensions of those crossing our borders illegally, you're just throwing money into the wind. So it's, again, if we're not going to have infrastructure such as a fence, then maybe roads, lights, and then the technology, and most importantly, manpower.
And just really quickly, should funding for all of that be a combination of state, local, and federal government? Do you think it should all be up to the federal government? How do you see that?
I do believe it should all be up to the federal government. That's where the laws for immigration and for securing our border lie. Unfortunately, I used to be our school board president here in our community. Our school can certainly use some of those billions of dollars that the state of Texas, I think there's about $12 or $13 billion we've used to secure the border over the last 4 years. I would love to see it utilized in other locations. However, I will tell you that the most important topic along the border right now is border security, because we know that border security equals national security. The state of Texas has put up a lot of money to help secure the border, fill the gaps where the Biden administration lacked. And, they're trying to work with the Trump administration to get reimbursed for some of that. Whether or not we will, I'm not sure. But regardless of that funding should come from the federal government, but it takes us all, state, local, and federal, to help secure the border, work in partnerships, and keep America secure.
Sheriff Cleveland, thanks for being with us this morning, and thanks for being on the front lines of this such an important fight. And also, thank you for just living up to what our Constitution, our framers are all about, which is community, taking care of the community, and that's what you're doing. So we thank you so much.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you all. God bless.
God bless.
All right. By the way, we're standing by for President Trump to speak in Saudi Arabia live. We will bring that to you. It's about 8:45 Eastern. We will see he will speak, not if he'll speak. He'll speak. The question is when it will be. All right, coming up. Everyone enjoys a good laugh, but just how important is laughter to our health? We have some answers, and that is straight ahead. Later, from the mouths of babes, young people reportedly leading a resurgence of faith in the United States. Details as the big show rolls on. American Sunrise, continuing after this.
Tallapan, Florida, right across the way from where we are, actually. Looking beautiful this morning. Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. G. We thank you for joining us. It is time now for today's health news. It is sponsored by the Wellness Company, and under the microscope today, the importance of laughter. Now, you've probably heard the age-old saying, laughter is the best medicine. And it turns out, you guys, it's actually true. We're about to tell you why. Laughter actually releases brain chemicals like endorphins and serotonin. It also decreases pain. And the release of endorphins heighten the body's pain relief mechanisms. And it also brings down stress and serves as a good coping mechanism when dealing with all sorts of anxieties. And finally, laughter is also immune boosting to your system. It lowers the stress hormone that we've all heard so much horrible stuff about, cortisol, right? And this activates cells that can fight infection, so it can keep you healthy as well. So spread a little laughter today. Tell a joke, watch a funny movie, spend some time with your pets. My kids would say, look at the memes we send you, Mom. They're really, really funny. I almost never get them. I don't understand them when they send them, but maybe I'll take an extra look today. Anyway, it is a new day in America, a new administration in Washington, D.C., a lot of excitement and optimism about the future. But there's also a lot of work to do, and especially when it comes to fixing our broken healthcare system. The truth is the forces responsible for breaking it aren't going to go away, and the challenges we face won't disappear overnight. So now more than ever, you want to be prepared. That, of course, is where the Wellness Company comes in. Their doctors are medical professionals. You can trust them. Their line of prescription medical kits, the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. You guys, we have the medical emergency kit, the contagion kit, the first aid kit, the travel kit. All of these kits contain an assortment of life-saving medications and a guidebook to tell you how to use the meds in the kit. So whether it's flu, strep throat, COVID, bird flu, a trip to the beach, a trip overseas, the Wellness Company, they have a prescription kit designed to keep you and your family safe. Make America healthy again. It starts at home. Do your part. Protect the health of yourself and your family. Go to twc.health/RAV. Give it an order. That's twc.health/RAV. Use your promo code RAV. That'll save you 10%. All right, let's go now to the Chief Scientific Officer for the Wellness Company, Dr. Peter McCullough. I have been chomping at the bit to ask you your take on this executive order we heard all about yesterday. Some are saying it's an absolute step in the right direction. You have some cautions. Tell us.
I do think it is a step in the right direction. Now, as a cardiologist, about 90% of the drugs I prescribe are generic. So they're already low cost, and this executive order wouldn't apply to that. But the branded drugs right now are priced so high, and unfairly so for Americans.
Yes.
Because they're not priced so high in Canada, Europe, and other Western countries. And they're unfairly priced. There's so many prior authorizations and approvals needed. Many doctors like myself give up, and we never prescribe these drugs. So believe it or not, Trump is doing Big Pharma a favor by dropping the prices on these and putting caps on these. I'll be more likely to prescribe it. The insurance companies will be more likely to improve it, and the drug company revenues will increase at a much more fair price point.
Because part of this will eliminate some of the PBMs. You and I have talked about these PBMs before. What effect will that have? And is that why there's so much, it seems like, money coming out of nowhere with this EO?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so all these intermediaries, the pharmacy benefit managers and authorization groups, what have you, they they charge fees. And the pharmacies and the drug companies have to pay. Ultimately, the consumer pays. By eliminating all that and dropping the costs, I'm going to be more likely to prescribe one of these newer high-tech drugs at a much more reasonable price, and the patient's more likely to get it.
It is really exciting when you start to think about it. What else needs to be done, though, Dr. McCullough?
We have a tremendous amount of work, I think, to get fraud and abuse and corruption out of the system. We know that, within the group purchasing organizations and hospital drug procurement, people, working close to health information technology, electronic medical records, all of these spaces are filled with corruption right now. And we need to have a sweep of corruption out, make sure the government is not entangled with private entities that are actually working against the healthcare of Americans.
Yeah. Well, there are so many things that you all have been doing at the Wellness Company for so long, since way before any of this was happening. How is this changing the products that you're offering to your customers, patients?
We've been responsive to our customers, Dr. Gina. Patients want non-pharmaceutical solutions,
right,
to improving their metabolism, immune system, freedom of infections, having themselves, feel better. Products that help with skin and hair, mood, certainly detoxification after, SARS-CoV-2 infection and COVID-19 vaccination. So we are providing a non-pharmaceutical set of solutions. First, we plenty of doctors here to prescribe generic and branded medications, but at the Wellness Company, we are putting the patient first in this whole new, era of Make America Healthy Again.
An ounce of prevention we always hear, and the Wellness Company certainly has some great, for example, cleanses that you can do. What do you recommend to people right now, where we are in seasons and all the things, the ominous news we're hearing out there? What do you recommend for people? What's the best product if they're going to invest today?
Yeah, many are seeking this combination product of ivermectin and mebendazole, which is used to treat parasitic infections. The CDC over 10 years ago, has a big push to recognize that there are neglected parasitic infections. The CDC calls them NPIs. We eat sushi, we can potentially eat undercooked beef and fish and other meats. In restaurants, we travel, and so parasitic infections can occur, and when they do, they're difficult to diagnose. So patients should stop in, see one of the doctors at the Wellness Company, and consider a parasite cleanse if it's clinically indicated.
President Trump recently banned gain-of-function research, something I know TWC has been pushing hard. Why is this so important?
It's like university labs could develop nuclear missiles with no regulation. Think about this. These pandemic potential infections can get the whole world sick. So these labs are working on developing designer viruses, bacteria, and fungi to harm the world's population, and at the same time come up with a countermeasure like a vaccine or a therapeutic. It's far too risky. It was the right thing to do to shut it down. We need to get control over this, and we need to get control over it worldwide. 14 biosecurity level 4 labs in the United States, including one in Galveston, Texas, shut them down. Over 140 BSL-3 labs. Far too dangerous to have this work done in America, and I'm glad Trump took this bold step.
Dr. McCullough, just real quick, no time left, but what grade would you give President Trump so far?
I give him a B+. I always want to see better.
Yeah. Dr. Peter McCullough, thank you so much. All right, coming up, playing the race card. One congresswoman is accusing president of trying to, quote, whitewash American history. Those details are right after the break. Also later, who is more likely to go to church? The young or the old? Listen, the answer might surprise you. Gen Z bringing Christianity back to America? Could it be real? We're going to talk about that coming up, too.
right, welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. Time now to stay awake, not woke. And guess what? You know the deal. It's brought to us by the 1775 Coffee Company. So 1775's Rejuvenate Coffee. You've heard us talk about it. Now, here's why it matters. AKG, not AOC. AKG is a compound your body naturally produces. But by the time you hit 40, hello, cue me, those levels start dropping fast. And by 80, they can decline by up to 90%. Ask Joe Biden. That hits your energy, recovery, and cellular health. Unfortunately, AKG isn't available through food. The only way to restore it is through direct supplementation. That's when 1775 Coffee's Rejuvenate blend comes in. It's a bold, dark roast. It's infused with CAAKG. It's designed to help you feel stronger, stay sharper, support healthy aging with every cup. That's what it does. This isn't just coffee, by the way. It's a strategic addition to your health regimen. I take it every morning. It's phenomenal. You can grab it solo or get the full longevity bundle. 2 bags of Rejuvenate Coffee, a bag of Pea Berry, one of the rarest coffees on earth, by the way. Did you know that less than 5% of beans qualify? And exclusive American branded 1775 merch that you won't find in stores. And it's all for $99. That's $150 off. It's a pretty good deal. Small batch, by the way, single origin, mold-free. Oh, that's good to know. Toxin-free, roasted fresh weekly in Miami. Miami? I can't say it. Miami. Real specialty coffee with one powerful proven ingredient. And after this week, the bundle deal is going to be gone. So go to 1775coffee.com/rab and grab the longevity bundle while you still can. It's coffee that wakes you up and fuels your body while supporting the values that you believe in. And now we're going to send it over to Dr. G because she has values that everybody can believe in. There's the transition of the morning. Dr. G, over to you.
All right, David, it appears that now we are caffeinated. It is time to stay awake, not woke. And who is woke today? Democrat Congresswoman Terry Sewell, who now says that she believes President Trump is attempting to, quote, whitewash our history. Sewell's criticism comes in response to the president's decision to fire Carla Hayden, the Librarian of Congress, over her very poor leadership. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says Hayden pursued DEI, but inappropriate books for children were in the Library of Congress, and that's while she was still in charge. So in a statement, Sewell called Hayden's firing a disgrace, urging both Democrats and Republicans to join together and stand against the president's decision. She accused President Trump of attempting to whitewash our history and replaced dedicated public servants with loyal sycophants, she said. Let's bring in David and Emily and Terrance for more. You know, guys, they have some interesting causes these days, Democrats. They're fighting for basically porn in our libraries, fighting you guys for illegal immigrant criminals. Their causes aren't really resonating with American people, though, Emily.
Certainly not, Gina, but I will say it's not a surprise from the Trump administration. I'm not sure where this congresswoman's comments are really coming from, because this was on the campaign trail. They were making these promises that they were going to attack DEI. They've been doing this in their own federal government agencies, at college campuses. Of course, the Library of Congress was going to be targeted in this way as well for an evaluation if their policies were in line with the administration's agenda, Terrance. I really think that this woman is a little confused about what's happening here.
And I think the reaction we're getting from many on the left is basically because some of President Trump's, in fact, many of President Trump's policies have been a shock to the system. It's been a shock to the status quo. And so now you're seeing these people react because President Trump is turning upside down what many of them have become so accustomed to. And it's a challenge for them. It's difficult for them. But President Trump and Republicans are going to continue to move forward, David.
Yeah, and let's remember, I mean, okay, you can put the DEI stuff aside for a second. Let's talk about the book banning portion of this. I mean, it's pretty rich for liberals to talk about book banning when they want to ban the all-time #1 bestseller called the Bible. So let's, let's just stop right there and drop the mic and leave the room. But beyond all of that, I was just looking, once again, I like to bring the receipts in the morning because, like I said, I have literally nothing better to do at 5:30 in the morning. And as I was going through this, 77% of school districts in the country have Dreams of My Father, the Obama memoir. They've got the Michelle Obama memoir. 77% of school districts in America, high school districts in America. Then you look at Vivek Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley. Okay, I get it, Nikki Haley. But, you just go down the list, Trump's books, all of them. Close to 0%, like 2%, something like that. So I mean, this idea that the liberals don't ban books. Oh, they ban books. They just do it the back doorway, if you will. They just don't order them.
It's okay, David. It's okay.
Yes.
The liberals haven't been teaching kids to read in generations anyway.
Well,
and so none of them can read the books that are there anywhere, David.
Yeah, that's a good
All right,
point.
you guys, listen. Coming up, Finding Faith, Gen Z leading the way on a resurgence of Christianity in the U.S. Why? Well, we're going to tell you. You're going to find out why the young are finding old-time religion when American Sunrise returns right after this.
God created the heaven and the earth.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm American Sunrise correspondent Emily Finn. It's time now for our Moment of Faith, brought to us by Lee Greenwood and the God Bless the USA Bible. Last week, we told you about the First Lady edition. Well, this week, we are featuring the Presidential edition, which there are only 4,700 of these available. These are destined to go quickly, so go to godblesstheusabible.com and click the referral code SUNRISE to get yours today. These special edition Bibles have a black cover with gold inscription commemorating President Trump's 45th and 47th presidencies. This Bible is the King James Version with red letters, and as we all know, is President Trump's favorite book. Grab yours today at godblesstheusabible.com, and don't forget to click the Sunrise referral code. Now, in focus today, Christianity is making a comeback across the U.S., and young people are leading the trend, sending Americans back to church. Specifically, Gen Z is behind the resurgence of faith. These young adults, born between 1997 and 2012, are between 13 and 28 years old and are more likely to attend weekly church services than both millennials and Gen X. And according to Axios, young men are most likely to be consistent churchgoers, a contrast contrast to generations past. Let's welcome the chairman and CEO of Promise Keepers, Shane Winnings, to the show for further discussion here. Good morning to you, Shane. You know, I am a Gen Z girl. I'm an elder Gen Z. I was born in 1997, but I'm so proud of my generation that they're really putting a lot of emphasis on the importance of faith. What do you attribute to this shift in generational views when it comes to Christianity?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. You know, I think that what the Bible says is coming to life, you know, in this generation. People have searched for the world. The world has been promoted to them. And when I say the world, I mean, you know, the things of the flesh, carnal things, temporal things that can't satisfy. And the next generation, they've tasted these things. They've seen it promoted on social media, on TV and movies, and they've found that it does not satisfy. And so they're looking to voices, you know, like President Trump and others who are saying, you know, this is the way. Let's go back to traditional values. Let's seek God. And as they do this, they're finding that peace that surpasses understanding. They're finding fulfillment and joy. And that's why their convictions are real, because they're not adopted. It's something they've experienced for themselves. And I believe that's why we're seeing this uptick in Christian popularity in the next gen.
Absolutely. Not something that your parents dragged you to go to church. You know, it's a decision that you're making on your own in a response to so much unrest in the world today, Shane. I think that was really well said. You know, something lately, Pope Leo was just elected. Very cool thing for Catholics. I am a Catholic, but extends further into Christianity. I've seen so many Christians talking about this, getting excited that he's the first American Pope. Very cool to see. Do you think that this American Pope is going to have even more of an influence on Christianity and the youth in America today?
You know, I sure hope so. With the Pope being over 1.4 billion people, I mean, that's a great responsibility. And so our prayer for the Pope, just like any other pastor or leader, is that they would stay true to God's word. And as they shine as an example for the next generation, as they stick to the word of God, we know that's what changes people's hearts and minds. And so, you know, with this temptation to go with culture, to affirm, to accept, I'm looking forward and praying for a pope that will hold fast to biblical truth, especially on those big issues that were on the ticket last presidential election. Absolutely. Shane Winnings, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your insight. Yeah. Thank you. All right, we'll be back with the second hour of American Sunrise in just 2 minutes. Stick around.
Introducing the limited edition God Bless the USA Bible, inspired by Lee Greenwood's hit song and the most recognized patriotic anthem in America, God Bless the USA. The God Bless the USA large print leather-bound King James Bible also contains America's founding documents, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance, along with a handwritten chorus to Lee Greenwood's song, God Bless the USA. With its large print and slim design, this Bible invites you to explore God's Word anywhere, anytime. The God Bless the USA Bible makes the perfect gift and cherished family heirloom keepsake to pass on to future generations. Designed for an easy reading experience in the trusted King James Version translation, this large print Bible is perfect to take to church, Bible study, work, and for traveling. Order yours today at GodBlessTheUSABible.com.
Coming up on the second hour of American Sunrise, House Republicans unveil part of their budget bill. Find out what changes have been made to the legislation. That's ahead. Plus, the president's planned trip to the Gulf states may improve ties and help boost America's economy. But will Saudi foreign and domestic policies be too high of a hurdle to get past? We'll discuss that. And Democrats' Texas Congressman Jasmine Crockett, we will talk about her, but look at this reunion specifically. We'll talk about all of that. Trump, I mean, it's going to be a potpourri of so many things. We've got hostage releases, Trump, Jasmine Crockett. Oh, my goodness. We'll talk about it all next on American Sunrise. Let's go. Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second hour of American Sunrise. I'm David Brody, coming to you from D.C., rainy D.C. Let's bring in Dr. G in West Palm, T. Bates in our Denver newsroom. Morning to both of you at the top of the hour. Hey, guys, obviously we're waiting for President Trump to speak. We thought it would be 8:45 Eastern. That's what we originally were told. Now we're told 9:45 Eastern. So we wait. Boy, that looks like my living room, by the way. It just reminds me of my living room, but not really. But anyhow, we'll wait for that. Here in a little bit, President Trump will take it live. In the meantime, how about that hostage release, Edon Alexander? And we've got to play this sound where the mom literally hugging Edon for the first time in, 2 years. Take a look. Oh, we keep on hearing the shrieking. Just great stuff. A mother's shriek of joy, Dr. G.
She had to think she would never see him again, and it's so obvious when you look at it. It's really a beautiful moment, and life's changed. You know, elections have consequences. I just keep thinking of that, and I can't understand why Joe Biden let it get as bad as it did. But why weren't Democrats raising absolute hell? Why wasn't the media raising absolute hell over any of this, when obviously President Trump has demonstrated again and again that all the things that the Democrats said they couldn't do, he's done. Terrance.
Mm-hmm. And to add some perspective to what you're saying, he's done these things in about 120 days. It's not like it's taken years for him to get hostages like Eden back, for him to return other hostages, for him to really start turning around the border crisis. He's done all of this in just over 100 days, which I think really speaks to not only his resolve, but also his vision for this country. Guys, in the meantime, as we're talking about President Trump, he is in Saudi Arabia as we speak. In fact, he touched down there early this morning while many of you were still speaking. This is a live look at the facility where President Trump is expected to speak here within the next hour or so. We, of course, will take you there live the moment he takes the podium. In the meantime, the commander-in-chief has already met with the Saudi Crown Prince, and this is his first leg of a three-country Middle East tour. He'll also visit Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. Among the issues on the agenda for the president this week are dismantling Iran's nuclear program, ending the war in Gaza, as well as addressing concerns about oil prices. There's also reporting out this morning that the president may end up going to Turkey at the end of this trip if he happens to think that his presence may be needed in order to complete a ceasefire deal between Russia and Ukraine. Presidents Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky are slated to meet in Istanbul, Turkey on Thursday. We're continuing to monitor this developing story as both leaders are expected, and I have to put a big quotation mark and emphasis on expected, to show up for those talks in Istanbul. In other foreign policy developments out of the White House this morning, dozens of white South Africans are on U.S. soil this morning after being granted refugee status. President Trump says the group has faced egregious discrimination in South Africa. The country's government, however, denies that claim. The Department of State says the group was, quote, carefully vetted before leaving Johannesburg and arriving in the nation's capital.
Because they're being killed, and we don't want to see people be killed. Now, South Africa leadership is coming to see me, I understand, sometime next week. And, we're supposed to have I guess a G20 meeting there or something, but we're having a G20 meeting. I don't know how we can go unless that situation's taken care of, but it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about.
The administration and its allies, like South African-born Elon Musk, allege that South Africa's white minority have faced discrimination by the country's post-apartheid government. They say the treatment includes a controversial law that allows the government to take private land under certain circumstances. Happening today, more House committees are expected to start the budget markup process, which is the next major step in the budget reconciliation process. Among the expected and more high-profile changes are changes to Medicaid, including work requirements and more frequent eligibility checks on beneficiaries. The Agriculture, Energy and Commerce, as well as Ways and Means committees are scheduled to start their markup portions or to mark up their portions of the government funding bill today. While the House is on the clock today, the U.S. Senate will be keeping a very close eye on the happenings across the U.S. Capitol, as Senate Republicans will likely need to revise the House draft in order to avoid a potential filibuster that could delay passage of the measure altogether. That's a quick check of your headlines. Now, let's get you back over to David.
Okay, T. Bates, appreciate it. And actually, let's pick up on that budget story, the budget reconciliation story. It really is a story in Washington right now. For more, let's bring in John Solomon. Editor-in-Chief of Just the News. John, good to see you. So, look, there's a lot to sift through here. I mean, we got three big markups, as Terrance was saying, in the House. There's stumbling blocks all over the place. I mean, the GOP has got to come together, but they got Medicaid cuts they got to figure out, the state and local tax deduction cap, that's the SALT stuff, and overall spending cuts. The House Freedom Caucus wants $2 trillion. So what are your thoughts on all of this? And he can only lose 3 votes. Speaker Johnson can only lose 3 votes. How is this going to get done, John? They got to figure this out.
Yeah, listen, I think you got to go member by member and figure what it takes. That's what the account heads. This is what lawmakers do. The key things are that even as they're fighting and even as they don't have agreement on the overall bill, there are some big historic changes that have already been put out there. Things like workfare, which we haven't had in 40 years. Used to be popular in Wisconsin and Michigan in the 80s and 90s. It's back on the table. Able-bodied people on Medicaid will have to work or do some community service to keep their benefits. These are historic changes, and there is pretty large agreement around those parts. The sticking parts are going to be the spending cuts. A lot of appropriators don't want to go nearly as far as the American people insisted they go when they elected them in 2024. So there's a utter lack of courage among the appropriators to get down to a number that would be meaningful, $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion a year. And that's going to be a really significant sticking point. Now, there are some unique ideas that could solve these issues. Congress could whiff on the spending and maybe only cut $800 million like the Senate wanted, $700 billion, short of $1 trillion over 10 years. But do something like tell the president, the numbers we give you in this budget are ceilings, but you are not floors, meaning you can go and spend less per program. If you can deliver it less and more efficiently, you're allowed to do that. That would allow Donald Trump to take out $500 billion to another $1 trillion a year because Congress no longer is saying you have to spend every penny we send you. That could be a sort of deal game changer behind the scenes that goes on to try to get the budget down. But I do think the size of the spending cuts are the big hiccup right now. There's some other things, the SALT tax deduction. It's harder for conservatives to swallow, raising this to $30,000 a year from $10,000 because it helps people who are upper middle class and upper class. But if you cut spending enough, they're on board with those things. So finding that magic spending cut is probably going to be the ultimate panacea that brings unity back to the party.
John, you had Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard on your show, and she made a pretty big announcement there that made a lot of news and is viral headlines. Tell us what she's doing to protect citizens who've been attacked by the FBI's abuse of power.
Yeah, listen, this is a change that Joe Biden made in 2021 that was classified, so we couldn't see it until Tulsi Gabbard declassified it a few weeks ago. It is a memo that says going forward in the future, starting in 2021, you no longer have to commit a crime to be under investigation by the FBI. If the FBI, or Homeland Security Department, believes you're involved in concerning non-criminal behavior, they can target you. This memo helps us explain why conservative Catholics, and school board parents, and military members who had done nothing wrong were being targeted in 21, 22, 23, 24. When we wrote on this memo last week, it created enormous outrage. Members of Congress, civil libertarians, lawyers, all saying this is one of the most extraordinary intrusions on civil liberties in history. Yesterday, Tulsi Gabbard gave us a statement on the record saying, I am pulling back this guidance. It is over with. It will not be used again. And by the way, I believe this guidance, which was distributed to all federal law enforcement back in 21, was an abuse of power. It will not happen again on my watch. A very historic and impactful moment for something that really had been going on in the shadows. We didn't know that this memo existed. And now we know, we understand a lot of the abuses of the last 4 years.
John, we're waiting for President Trump to speak in Saudi Arabia. That should happen here within the next 30 or 45 minutes. Here's a live look at the facility where he's going to be. In fact, moments ago, as you were talking, John, we saw Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, walk by the cameras. Put into perspective for us what's at stake here over the next several days as the president, of course, is visiting Saudi Arabia. Then he'll go on to Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. But even beyond that, John, I'm also seeing reporting this morning that President Trump could end up extending his trip a little bit and potentially go to Turkey if his presence is needed in order to solidify a deal between Russia and Ukraine, which I think is really the headline that's somewhat flying under the radar at the moment. What are you hearing from your sources in terms of that possibility? I think that's huge news if, in fact, it does happen.
Yeah, there's a strong possibility. First, Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky have to show up. That's important. They have to go to this May 15th set of talks and engage in meaningful conversation. If they do, I think President Trump would come along and join them and try to get to the sort of camaraderie it's going to take to end a very bitter and ugly war. I do think the president will do it, but only if the two men are negotiating good faith. He's not going to waste capital if they have a quick meeting and a grip and granting leave. So it will depend on whether these two men are serious about peace. And if they're not, I think Donald Trump could turn around and put some really hard pain on both of these countries with new sanctions and walking away from the table. Now, what's at stake in the Middle East with this trip? Think of it as a teeter-totter. And a few years ago, Iran had all of the weight on its side. Donald Trump sort of evened that out. There's sort of a flat line of a teeter-totter right now. If Donald Trump can get Saudi Arabia to make an Abraham Accord with Israel, if Syria and Israel, as they've begun talking, could create some sort of alliance or peace arrangement, all of a sudden that teeter-totter tilts toward the Sunni Arab peaceful world and away from Iran. It puts Iran in a horrific position and most likely would have to make a deal with Donald Trump because the rest of the Middle East will be lined up against them. Iran already suffered the loss of Assad in December, embarrassing. A little bit more pressure on the Abraham Accords could put Iran in a position where they would accede to a real peace deal with the United States. So a lot at stake in this trip.
Oh, absolutely. What a game changer.
And another thing, John. No.
And one more thing. Yeah.
What are we going to do with our spare time?
Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Go back to your FOIA request. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. Coming up.
Thanks, John.
I'm sorry. Every time I see John, I think FOIA. Coming up, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett has what many are calling a racist take on who should lead the Democrat Party. Her comments right after the break. Also, should we all have tax-free investment accounts? The idea is being talked about, but what are they and will it happen? Details ahead. More talk about your money on American Sunrise after this.
right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I just want to update you here. President Trump just signing a document there in Saudi Arabia. He, of course, is set to speak here in short order. You can see him sitting back down now to sign another document. He arrived early this morning in Saudi Arabia. All of this is still developing, so we're still working to find out what this specific document is that he is signing. But as I mentioned, President Trump is expected to speak there on his trip to Saudi Arabia here in the next 30 to 45 minutes or so. He landed early this morning while you were sleeping, probably around 3 o'clock, just before 3 o'clock Eastern time. Since arriving, he's already met with the Crown Prince there in Saudi Arabia, has been back to the hotel, and now, as you can see here, even from a distance, he's signing some documents there. A number of issues are going to be addressed during his trip. Of course, he'll talk about Iran's nuclear ambitions and trying to curtail that. He'll also talk about oil there in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, of course, an OPEC nation and an oil-rich nation, so he'll be discussing that. And then, in general, be discussing other issues relevant to the Middle East. They're sitting down now, so I'm going to be quiet, and let's see if maybe he and this looks like this may be one of the Crown Princes as well are going to take some questions. Let's listen in.
لبدء مراسم التبادل والإعلان عن عدد من الاتفاقيات والمذكرات الثنائية بين المملكة العربية السعودية والولايات المتحدة الأمريكية.
Your Royal Highness, Mr. President, with your permission, we shall now begin the ceremony of exchange and announcements of a number of bilateral agreements and memorandums between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United States of America.
نبدأها بمذكرة التفاهم بين وزارة الطاقة في المملكة العربية السعودية ووزارة الطاقة في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية للتعاون في مجال الطاقة. يتقدم من الجانب السعودي صاحب السمو الملكي الأمير عبد العزيز بن سلمان بن عبد العزيز وزير الطاقة، ومن الجانب الأمريكي معالي السيد كريس رايد وزير الطاقة.
Starting with a memorandum of understanding between the Ministry of Energy and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the U.S. Department of Energy for cooperation in the field of energy. From the Saudi side, His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman bin Abdulaziz, Minister of Energy. From the U.S. side, His Excellency Mr. Chris Wright, Secretary of Energy.
يلي ذلك مذكرة نوايا بين وزارة الدفاع في المملكة العربية السعودية ووزارة الدفاع في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية في شأن تحديث وتطوير قدرات القوات المسلحة السعودية من خلال القدرات الدفاعية المستقبلية. يتقدم من الجانب السعودي صاحب السمو الملكي الأمير خالد بن سلمان بن عبد العزيز وزير الدفاع، ومن الجانب الأمريكي معالي السيد بيت هيكسeth وزير الدفاع.
Next, a letter of intent between the Ministry of Defense of Saudi Arabia and the U.S. Department of Defense regarding the modernization and development of the capabilities of the Saudi Armed Forces through future defense capabilities. From the Saudi side, His Royal Highness Prince Khalid bin Salman bin Abdulaziz, Minister of Defense. From the U.S. side.
All right, so we're going to continue to watch this, but we'll talk a little bit over all of this. Let's bring in Dr. Gina and David for more on this conversation. David, the thing that really strikes me is that this agreement that was just signed, and we, of course, saw President Trump signing the documents, one of them kind of furthers a campaign promise in terms of really helping to solidify America's energy infrastructure and making America energy independent. This obviously, to some degree, speaks to that, or at least what we're hearing.
Yeah, and I'm reading, you're right, Terrance, and there's going to be multiple deals here. I'm reading the pool reports as they come in, and I'm looking here, because understand the way television is working here, this is a feed coming in. It's a bit delayed, so I've got some of the information that's coming, or that has already happened, if you will. But I'm looking here, and it specifically says that it was President Trump that's joking here, and you'll see it here in a moment, that he joked that $600 billion that MBS had pledged to the United States back in his first term actually could be up to $1 trillion this time, and he was hoping that could be the case, and maybe that will be the case. So we're going to find out. A lot of this is economic partnership. A lot of it is economic cooperation. I'm just looking here, so excuse me as I look through this. But as I look, they both talked about having a good relationship. They're patting each other on the back, basically. And then as I just look, one last thing here, let me double check it. Yeah, but there's going to be a $600 million investment. Apparently, a lot of this will be purchasing fighter jets, specifically, $600 million purchasing fighter jets from the United States. And that's when Trump talked a lot about military equipment, that we've got the best in the world, Gina. So this is kind of what.
And David, I'm glad you brought that up. Gina, I just kind of want to shift the conversation to you, because I think that military conversation and military investment is going to be a big part of President Trump's trip to the Middle East. Of course, he's there in Saudi Arabia, but even in conversations in Qatar and then later on in the United Arab Emirates, I would imagine that defense and military spending is going to be a pretty critical part of any conversation that he's engaged in.
Well, this is a multifaceted thing. President Trump already met this morning, in fact, and asked for the $1 trillion investment that he went over there for, that he said he was going to be asking for, asking Saudi Arabia to increase its investment beyond the $600 billion that was already pledged, in fact, over 4 years by Crown Prince. And so this is very interesting. They gave him a very lavish welcome. I guess the welcome they give can vary a little bit, Terrance. And in this case, there was an honor guard. There was a team of Arabian horses, a delegation of royals and business leaders that greeted him. And this is a really good sign that perhaps he will get what he came here for, Terrance, up to and including the military and financial and other asks, David.
I just wanted to point out that these trips I went on the first trip in 2017. I went to Saudi Arabia, Rome, Israel. I went with President Trump on that first trip. And look, all of this is coordinated. So all of the deals that we're seeing announced now, it's not kind of like they went behind the scenes in Saudi Arabia when he got off the plane. And this is all done deal. The I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. So this is all pre-planned, because you're not going to go over there and come up with nothing. So they already had this planned. So that's good news. So we'll see how this unfolds. But it's quite a striking visual to see there. And look, I mean, Saudi Arabia is an important partner here. I think John Solomon made a great point about Iran. The Saudis and Iran, here we go, Sunnis and Shiites, they can't stand each other. And so Saudi Arabia wants a crippled Iran. Because Iran basically wants to make a whole beeline from Iran right to the Red Sea, all the way, right from the river to the sea, right? That's the whole idea. That's what they're trying to do. And Saudi Arabia doesn't want to see that. And so there's this whole interesting, development, if you will, between what they're trying to do here.
Hey, David, as I'm watching these pictures and I'm seeing President Trump sit right next to the Crown Prince, I have to admit, the critic in me says, and is reminded of the saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. While Saudi Arabia is an ally, let's just be honest about it, it's an ally that we continue to keep one eye on at all times, because that relationship could shift, or it's not always been beneficial.
True. I mean, that's definitely true.
And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, David. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to kind of give you a leading question, but I think it is important to kind of point out the actual relationship and the implications thereof.
Well, I think you're spot on. And let's remember, MBS has a bit of a checkered history, obviously. So, yeah, there's always that. Look, Gina, to me, when you talk about Middle East and Middle East politics specifically, and especially U.S. potential involvement in Middle East politics, it gets yucky, it gets dicey, it gets convoluted, and it can be a little bit tough to negotiate, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many players and so many different varied interests. And you have to remember that the culture is different. This is not a Western culture. This is not the same sort of values. So it's just a little bit different. I keep wondering when President Trump has slept. He looks very tired to me. I've almost never seen him look tired in my entire life. But I can't blame him. He arrived at 3 a.m., I believe, to all the pomp and circumstance, went straight into meetings. I don't know if he slept yet, you guys. Do you know, David?
No, he did not, actually. I just looked at, I've been looking at his itinerary because they lay it out on these trips. Every 15 minutes, every hour and a half. It tells you what he does. He literally took the plane ride. By the way, I've heard it's a pretty nice plane, and he probably got some sleep there. But when he landed, that was it. I mean, he was boom, 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 going to bilateral, excuse me. I started to get DC wonky, the bilats there. So, yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
No sleep.
Yeah, he touched down pretty much this morning. As I saw, he touched down. I went to the hotel. I want to say it was like a Four Seasons or something like. It was one of the higher
Four
named.
Seasons.
It
wasn't
like
Motel 6.
Seasons.
Yeah,
absolutely. Wasn't Red Roof Inn for sure. He went to the hotel for a minute, then went over to the palace, spent some time with the Crown Prince, and then, as you just saw, continued in some meetings and now signing those documents. And then at some point in time here within the next, say, 30 minutes, he'll have a talk. He'll talk to the media and make a presentation and then make his way back to the hotel. So it's been a very busy day. That's why at the top of the show, Dr. Gina, I was joking, saying I've been up early with the president because he touched down like just before 3 o'clock, and I was watching it all just so I could kind of see the pomp and circumstances of all of that. It is cool to watch. Yes, I'm a nerd. I'm sorry. I'm a nerd. I like watching, the arrivals of heads of state and to see how they're received. But more importantly, and Dr. Gina, you kind of touched on this, I think his reception there in Saudi Arabia really sets a tone for the rest of his Middle East trip. It kind of creates an atmosphere for the other countries to follow, for the Qatars and the United Arab Emirates, that this is a business trip and you might want to respect the man.
Yeah. Terrance, you watched him deboard the plane. Who all is with him on this trip? Obviously, we know that I think Pete Hegseth, we saw Marco Rubio. Who else is with him on this trip in terms of his cabinet secretaries?
So I saw Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio, excuse me. Also saw some other secretaries, some other cabinet members. I can't tell you specifically who all is there, but as I saw him deboard the plane, the focus, of course, was solely on President Trump as he came down and he met the Crown Prince there and the tarmac, and there was lots of pomp and circumstance. The focus of the camera or the camera angles that I saw didn't necessarily have the other secretaries. I don't know if they arrived with him or if some of them had arrived in advance of President Trump. Go ahead, David.
So in the press pool stuff that I get daily, or really minute by minute, I see the delegation. Here it is, Gina. The delegation is Rubio, Pete Hegseth, Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick is there. The Energy Secretary Chris Wright is there. Susie Wiles, Chief of Staff, Dan Scavino, Stephen Miller. Steve Witkoff is there, obviously, and then some other folks that maybe folks don't know. David Sachs is there. That's interesting. And, of course, Elon Musk is there as well. So Elon Musk, and there's video of that all over X and places. Kimball Musk is also there. Kimball Musk is Elon Musk's brother, which is interesting. He was invited.
Wonder why.
Yeah, so... Well, he makes a lot of money himself. He owns this restaurant chain across the country. I forgot the name of it. I think it's called the Food something. So I'm not quite sure why he's there, other than, hey, come along for the ride. You're Elon Musk's brother. I have no idea.
And that is something President Trump does. I remember one time I was at a rally. He saw me out in the audience. He called me as I was walking out of the rally and said, "Why don't you come back on Air Force One?" He'll do random things like that sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Well, speaking of...
I'm sure to the chagrin of the Secret Service. Go ahead, David.
Yeah. Speaking of that, they announced the media delegation, and I guess these are people that are actually with him on Air Force One. Sean Hannity, which we saw some video of Sean Hannity on Air Force One with President Trump. Brett Baer is there. Zeke Miller from the Associated Press. So AP needs to chill out. Stop complaining. And a few other folks from ABC and CBS. All right. Well, we've got to wrap all this up because T-Bates, it's time for you to shine, of course. Now, you're not sponsored by AMAC. I want to be clear. I think I said that last time. My knees, by the way, are sponsored by AMAC. But this segment is sponsored by AMAC because we're going to the New York Stock Exchange. Here we go.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
We're getting ready for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. I can tell you pre-market trading not looking so hot right now on the Dow. It is in the red. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, however, are both up in pre-market trading. The applause is underway, which means the bell is going to ring here in short order and the markets will officially open. The markets could be impacted by the latest CPI numbers, Consumer Price Index. It shows that inflation is actually down slightly in April from the April before. The expectation was that inflation will be at about 2.4%. It's actually at 2.3%. Those numbers just coming out this morning. So that may be a sign that well, it is absolutely a sign that inflation is coming down slightly, and President Trump has been successful in doing that. Those numbers, again, very likely will impact the numbers here on Wall Street as the day progresses. Again, the Dow is down right now. S&P 500 and NASDAQ are up. Gold and silver are also, or gold, excuse me, is up. Oil is also up over a full percentage point. Oil is something that President Trump is going to be talking about there in Saudi Arabia during his trip. Well, this July, there's a global summit of BRICS nations in Rio de Janeiro. The bloc of emerging superpowers includes China, Russia, India, and Iran, and they're meeting with the goal of displacing the U.S. dollar as the global currency. They're calling this the Rio Reset. As BRICS nations push forward with their plans, global demand for U.S. dollars will decrease, bringing down the value of the dollars in your savings. While this transition won't happen overnight, the Rio Reset in July marks a pivotal moment when BRICS objectives move decisively from theoretical possibility towards inevitable reality. Learn if diversifying your savings into gold is right for you. The Birch Gold Group can help you move your hard-earned savings into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals. Claim your free information kit on gold simply by texting the word America to the number 989898. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of satisfied customers, allow the Birch Gold Group to arm you with a free, no-obligation information kit on owning gold before July and before the Rio Reset. Again, simply text the word America to the number 989898 in order to get all of this information. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the president slashes U.S. drug prices in order to match lower ones abroad. So, how will President Trump's executive order affect your future prescription pickups? Find out. Plus, from Signalgate to a college student accusing Pete Hegseth of plagiarism, when will the attacks on the Trump administration finally end? We'll talk about it next.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. G. Thanks for joining us this morning. We invite you to join in our conversation over on Getter and Rumble. It is time now to take the political pulse. The beat today, President Trump takes on Big Pharma. And the president signed an executive order yesterday to lower drug prices in America so that they line up with what other countries pay. How simple is this? The president says that America, quote, will no longer tolerate profiteering and price gouging from Big Pharma. He also says some prescription drug and pharmaceutical prices will be reduced almost immediately, you guys, by 50 to 80%. Joining us now with his take, the host of America's Voice Live, that is Steve Gruber, never one to put it mildly. Steve, a White House official says Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wants price reductions across all U.S. markets within 30 days. But here's my question. I keep asking this of everyone I can get my hands on to ask. How long will it be till Americans feel that change?
You know, that's a great question, Dr. G. I mean, it's an important step here. And what I find beautiful about this is that Donald Trump reached into Bernie Sanders' stack of cards and pulled one and played it. Remember when Bernie Sanders ran for president, he said he would cut pharmaceutical costs by 50%. And yet somehow today, those same Democrats are criticizing Donald Trump, including Bernie Sanders, saying, well, it's not codified. Well, it has to be codified. I agree with that. So maybe, Bernie, you can come across the aisle and have bipartisan support for Donald Trump to lower the prices of prescription medications for Americans across this country. It's a good idea. Now, I don't know how fast these things will get into the system. I mean, there's a certain amount of time for things to catch up. But you look at the economic news today, inflation's down 2.3%. Those numbers just came in. The price of pharmaceuticals coming down. That's good news. The price of gasoline in many places now around $2.60, $2.70 a gallon. That's good news. I mean, every place I look, there's good news for the American consumer when it comes to pocketbook issues. And that's one of the driving reasons, if not the number one reason, that Donald Trump was elected in 2024, is to get prices under control, get inflation under control, get the price of prescription medications under control. And gosh darn it, if he hasn't just delivered in spades, much to the chagrin of the Democrats, who are slack-jawed and glassy-eyed, trying to figure out, well, what are we going to yell at him for now? Hard for them to criticize him on this one, but they're trying. It's embarrassing, frankly, but here we are.
Yeah. Hey, Steve, let me ask you about Trump's trip over to Saudi Arabia. Obviously, it goes to Qatar after that, Qatar. I don't know. Is it Qatar or Qatar? Should we take a vote real quick? I mean, I say Qatar.
I'm with Qatar.
Okay. Qatar? All right. I don't know.
I don't care.
You don't care. Anyhow, so he goes to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and then the UAE. But here's the point. He's not going to Israel, which I think is very interesting. He might go to Turkey, actually, with the whole Zelensky-Putin situation unfolding on the May 15th.
Wouldn't that be something?
Wouldn't that be? Yeah, for sure. So what do you make of what he's doing over in Saudi Arabia? Because a lot of this is economic cooperation. But as Terrance said in the last segment, which is a great point, which is, hey, keep your enemies a bit closer because, once again, MBS has got a checkered history. And, yeah, we need Saudi Arabia in the sense that, you know, there's a lot of cooperation that can be done there. But, like, we shouldn't, like, be fawning over these folks, like, trusting them, like, left and right.
Look, we need economic cooperation with Saudi Arabia. That remains true. But you're right. Fawning over them, that's too far. I mean, they are, you know, known to kill journalists if they don't like what they write. They're obviously, it's 25 years removed, but let's talk about 9/11. Who's behind the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center in New York? Quite clear what happened that day and Saudi Arabia's connection to it. So before you get too carried away, just keep those things in mind and keep things in perspective. However, the other part of this conversation is maybe up to $1 trillion with a T, $1 trillion in investment in the United States. Again, delivering on these economic promises. We've seen trillions of dollars already dedicated to the United States from a variety of places, be it Japan, South Korea, and elsewhere, that Donald Trump has facilitated coming in. $1 trillion from the House of Saud, Saudi Arabia. That would be tremendous influx of capital again. And again, probably a big victory for American employees and employers working here. That'd be big news. So we'll see what happens on that front. UAE, we'll see what he does there. The big question for me, and I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not a big fan of this plane deal until I hear more about this thing from Qatar, Qatar, whatever. I'm not a big fan. I just think, look, because if you put the shoe on the other foot, if Joe Biden was doing something similar, we'd all be going, nah, not a good idea.
Thank you.
And so
exactly,
it might be legal. It might be a lot of things. I don't know. I need a lot more details before I come down on a final decision on this one, but I want details and I want him to be clear. Look, he's doing so well in so many places. Why detract from that? I mean, he's winning in so many places, whether it's a peace deal between India and Pakistan, fragile, but it's there. Like you mentioned, Zelensky and Putin sitting down in Turkey, he could show up there. Wouldn't that be something? It really would be a remarkable thing. He's in the neighborhood, drop in on Air Force One and make a visit, have a three-way conversation, maybe end the bloodshed there. He got the last known American surviving from October 7th, returned home from Gaza. I mean, the wins are just stacking up, plus everything else that's going on, the pharmaceuticals deal, eliminating the restrictions on your washing machine, your furnace, your shower head, all of these things. He's winning everywhere, so the plane thing just makes it's a distraction that I don't think he needs at this point, regardless of what the truth is. I'll let more information come out before I make a final decision, but I'm not a big fan at this point.
But even from a perspective of optics, it raises questions and has many people raising eyebrows. I think that's fair to say. Let's talk a bit about foreign policy. No, absolutely. I fully agree. I'm right here with you. I hear you and see you, my friend. Let's talk about foreign policy a little bit. Obviously, this is supposed to be the first foreign policy trip for President Trump. It ended up being Pope Francis's funeral when President Trump went over to Rome. How do you assess President Trump standing on the world stage just in these first 115, 120 days or whatever it is of this second presidency?
No, it projects strength. Look, we were running live feeds this morning on the Steve Gerber Show, which kicks off programming every day here on Real America's Voice. Live footage at 6 a.m. this morning. And there's Donald Trump. Right here's the pictures now. We were running this live this morning. Here he is greeting members of his own team, greeting members of the Saudi Arabia, contingency that met him there, talking to people, having long conversations. Joe Biden wouldn't have lasted 30 seconds in that arena. Not 30 seconds. Here's Donald Trump on the world stage, projecting strength, shaking hands, talking to people, recognizing people, having real conversations about what it's going to take to move America forward. Yes, in cooperation with Saudi Arabia in this particular instance, but he's there. He's bold. He's on the world stage. He looks like a leader, and he's confident. And I still have no idea what this 78-year-old man does to have this kind of vigor and energy. Good God. I mean, it's 6 in the morning. He just flew around the world at 6 in the morning. He's sitting there shaking hands. Looks like he's been rested for 10 hours. He doesn't sleep that long over the course of about 3 days. It's remarkable to me.
Yeah.
He's 20 years my senior. It's remarkable to me.
It's remarkable.
But there he is. What is that? That's strength. That's leadership. That's the American president standing there shaking hands and showing quite clearly who's in charge, who's running this thing. He is.
Steve, Town Hall wrote that there, of course, is another day that ends in Y, another hit piece on Pete Hegseth. I think they've given up on hitting President Trump, and they're just trying to hit those around him who they think are strong, or perhaps the Republican bench. And they're saying, maybe Town Hall at least is saying also not a big deal. College newspaper, the Daily Princetonian, says Hegseth might have plagiarized some parts of his senior thesis. I mean, this is just the most ridiculous.
Senior what? Senior in high school, senior in college? I mean, who cares?
Honestly.
I don't care. And here's the thing. You ask 100 people in this country, what do they care about? Do they care about the fact that Donald Trump just signed a deal to lower prescription medications, to bring peace to Ukraine, to get the last hostage out of Gaza? What do they care about? Those things. Do they care the fact that the price of eggs now has come down dramatically since he took office? The price of gasoline is down 5 cents from last week, 10 cents from a week ago, and 60 cents from a year ago. Mm-hmm. That's what they care about. They know that they can compete better. That's what they care about.
And the fact, Steve, that Pete Hegseth, ever since he's been there and since President Trump has been there, guess what? Everybody wants to be in the military again. Imagine that. Right.
Imagine that. Oh, and one other thing. Another executive order upheld, by the way, by one of these federal district courts. Yes, you can eliminate, or was it the Supreme Court? I lose track. There's so many court cases. But you can, I guess it was the Supreme Court that weighed in. You can eliminate transgender members of the military because they don't fit the core principle of break big things and kill people. That's what the military is supposed to do, break big things and kill people to defend this country at all costs. That's what it is. And so Pete Hegseth wins. And I do not understand the Democrats clinging to these 80-20 issues. I mean, you saw what happened in New Jersey happening again yesterday. All the people trying to block the detention center. You see that happening. You see the Democrats trying to back men and women's sports. You see them trying to promote transgenderism. Guys, newsflash, you're losing on all of these issues. They're not even close calls. When you're being led by Jasmine Crockett and AOC and Bernie Sanders, you're in real trouble. Bernie Sanders has been and always will be a kook. Period. He's always been a friend. He's not even a Democrat, and yet the Democrat Party's marching in tune to what he has to say. Look, Bernie Sanders has always been a whack job. I mean, I'm just going to put it out there. He's always been a fringe character with strange ideas and strange mannerisms and complaining about capitalism while living in his 3 mansions. Sorry, Bernie, that doesn't hold much water with me. And so when you've got these Democrats who are being led by imbeciles, if I might be so proud, but AOC, Jasmine Crockett, Bernie Sanders, these are not your brightest and best. These are people that should be quietly let out of the room and told to be quiet so you can get work done with the adults. But that's who the Democrats have right now. Look, Mr. Ed, there she is.
And Bernie looks like he's been electrocuted. His hair looks like he's been electrocuted every single day.
Well, yeah, he looks like a Back to the Future, you know.
Well, and I think
Dr.
at every
Brown,
turn,
Back
Steve,
to the Future, right?
we need to continue. Yes, I think at every turn we need to continue to remind the American people that these cults of personality, like AOC, like Bernie Sanders, are making millions and millions of dollars, touting the things that they probably don't even believe. It's all just a sideshow to make money. But Steve Gruber, you are not a sideshow to make money. You are the real deal, and that's why we're so glad we had you today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Steve.
Always.
All right. All right, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez emerging as one of the top voices in the Democrat Party. Did you ever think it? Could she be thinking about a presidential run? You guys, get your popcorn. You get to be the judge on this one. Back with more American Sunrise right after this.
Let's spill some tea.
Welcome back. I'm American Sunrise correspondent Emily Finn. Let's spill some tea, sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. Make sure to go to artilleryteaco.com and use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off your first order. Artillery Tea is all natural, whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free and each tea bag can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. Make sure to go to artilleryteaco.com AMERICASTCO.com and use the promo code AmericasT for 25% off your first order. Time to spill some tea, and in the cup today, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who says she isn't ruling out the possibility of a presidential run. According to the Wall Street Journal, those close to AOC say she is considering challenging Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer for his seat in New York, or could even throw her hat in the ring for the 2028 Democrat presidential nomination. Wow, this comes as AOC has been traveling the country with Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, hosting Fight Oligarchy events to attack billionaires and the Trump administration. For more, let's bring in Dr. Gina, David, and Terrance. I mean, you guys, we were just reporting a couple days ago about how her constituents are so fed up with her. Her offices are closed. She doesn't answer any of their questions. And now she's saying she's not even ruling out running for president in 3.5 years from now. I mean, come on. She really needs to focus on her own district, David.
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm going to go against the grain here this morning and say absolutely AOC can win the presidency. Don't laugh. Don't laugh. Here's why. Kamala Harris, think about that. Think this through. I mean, let's think this through. Kamala Harris. Listen, guys. Kamala Harris got 75 million votes. Word salad. Kamala Harris got 75 million votes. And you're telling me that AOC can't get more than 75 million votes? Absolutely she can.
No.
With a mobilized, absolutely. And here's the thing. Remember, Kamala Harris got 75 million votes against Trump. There won't be a Trump next time around. So you better hope J.D. Vance just does just as well as Trump. I can't see that possible. Maybe he does. But the point is that AOC has got the it factor. And by the way, if you disagree with me, then you disagree with President Trump. President Trump told me, well, let me just finish my point.
I'm sorry.
Real quick, Gina. President Trump told me that. The reason I want to say that, President Trump told me that in the White House in his first term, looked me straight in the eye and said, she's got the it factor. He knows it. And there's a big, my point simply is that if you got the it factor, then that could take you a long way. That's all I'm saying. If you want to sleep on her, so to speak, as they like to say back in 1994 or whatever it was, go ahead. I'm not.
Well, Gavin Newsom has an it factor as well, and right now the big money is getting behind Gavin Newsom because they don't want someone as leftist as AOC. Also, the Democrat Party has seen what happens when they run these kind of emotional, tantrum-throwing women, and I'm sorry if I sound sexist, I kind of am. At politics, trying to get the women's vote. If you want a woman to win the presidency, you don't put up an AOC or a word salad Kamala. You put up someone who's rational. You put up someone like a Margaret Thatcher, right? Someone who's measured, someone who's contemplative, someone who's analytical. These women are none of that. The Democrats keep grabbing at them because they know how to take center stage. You can have that it factor all day long. But if your politics are that messed up, you are not going to win. And David, I do agree with you, and I'm with President Trump, that she has a bit of an it factor. But I can tell you the Democrats are not thinking of her, I don't think, long term. She's somebody that's going to throw her weight around. But she's made a lot of enemies in the Democrat Party. And David, I don't have to tell you, as somebody that resides in Washington, D.C., what those inter-party conflicts look like.
Mm-hmm. I'm just saying she can win. I'm not saying she will win. There's a big difference.
Well, David, I can win if I run. I could continue. Well, you know what I mean. If I get a
no, but she can definitely win.
I don't see it happening personally, and I will owe you a steak since Dr. Gina already owes me a steak.
I still owe you a steak.
If in fact she does win, David, and she makes it through, I don't even see AOC getting out of a Democrat primary. I don't see her winning the Democratic primary to even run. I just don't see it. If I'm wrong, David, I am on the record right now. I will buy you a steak. I just don't see that. I don't see that happening.
Listen, I got to tell you, I know we got to go, but I don't disagree with you guys in the sense that when she goes through the primary process, we'll see if she has the chops to stand up against X, Y, and Z Democrat like a Gavin Newsom or whatever, who's got the policy chops big time. Even though I disagree with 100% of his policy chops, so we'll see. But the point is that if you have the it factor, it can take you a long way.
But not all the way. I think of the Democrats in the Midwest where I'm from, these yellow dog Democrats who will vote Democrat no matter what, except if it's AOC or Gavin Newsom. I mean, if the Democrats were smart, David, they would get a Midwestern Democrat to run.
Yeah.
She's got the fire, she's got the passion. I'm just not so sure she really has a solid platform.
Yeah.
It sounds like the quad box is a little bit divided this morning. Definitely love to see the debate. And we want to know what you think as well. Let us know on Rumble or Getter. Hop on, let your voice be heard. We'll be right back here on American Sunrise.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I didn't mean to squeak. I don't know why that happened. Thanks so much for joining us today. Time now for our Sunny Side. It's only Tuesday, you all. In the pan today, the last known living American hostage in Gaza was reunited with his family yesterday. Adon Alexander was finally released by Hamas, ending more than 580 days in captivity that started when the terrorists attacked back on October 7th, 2023, a day we'll never forget. The 21-year-old New Jersey native who had 2 birthdays. Can you imagine how his mother felt on those days while in captivity, probably not even knowing if he was alive or not, held a sign reading, "Thank you, President Trump." Welcome back to American Sunrise. Just, you know, guys, this is just a really beautiful moment. And you really can't, I mean, this needs to be framed in our moments of national history. And yet, President Trump is making so much progress. He's almost running over this story with his own progress. I mean, I hate to put it that way, David, but it's like he should be basking in this moment that he gave to the world, and yet he's just so busy doing the next thing. Kudos to him.
He does it all the time. He runs over his own news cycle. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I'll real quick, over to you, Emily, but I just wanted to say, he's 21 years old. Now he's 23, I guess, or almost 23. But the reason he was held last, for a lot of reasons, but you know, a young male, military age, they were going to hold him to the last possible second, for sure, if they were ever going to release him.
I mean, so scary at that age, especially at that moment that you're seeing on your screen right now, that embrace. It was just so beautiful. And you think about all the horrible things that he must have gone through, all the horrible things that he must have seen. It's going to be quite the process for him to recover and rebuild after this. But he's definitely thanking the right people, thanking President Trump. And like you said, Gina, the president should get a lot of credit for this beautiful moment that we're witnessing right now, Terrance.
No, absolutely. And by the way, just another update. President Trump is expected to speak in Saudi Arabia at any moment. Stay tuned here to Real America's Voice. We, of course, will cover his remarks live here on Real America's Voice.
I'll stay in my anchor chair.
So happy for that mama. What a Mother's Day. Wow. Although I don't even know if they do that in Israel. But great show, you guys, today. Thanks for joining us, to all of you. So much more for you. Every single morning we start right here at 8 a.m., 7 a.m. with Jake Novak in the early show. War Room is up next. Hug your children. Love your God. Go boldly now. Make it a great day.
Receiving line of, frankly, rich guys coming to get their 30 seconds with President Trump and with the Crown Prince. Crown Prince greeted President Trump at the airport a short time ago, an honor he did not offer President Biden in 2022 when he arrived. The president's limousine, the Beast, was escorted to the royal court by Arabian horses. The Saudis know how to put on a show. They know how to welcome President Trump. Remember in that visit in 2017 when they projected his face onto the side of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel there.
Yeah, the Saudis created a template that was his. Trump's first trip was May 2017. I was on that trip traveling with the presidential pool. The images of the president and the king were draped on every building as the motorcade went down the highway. On his hotel, the Ritz-Carlton, they put up his face, as you say, with in digital imagery. The same hotel, by the way, that Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, usually later used to detain his political prisoners. That was the trip of the Orb, where the president and the king and the head of Egypt all stood with it. Yes, the Saudis figured out early the trick for President Trump is to flatter him, to treat him like royalty, which is what he wanted. And we saw that on that trip. We are seeing it again now. And yes, the White House has said, look, this is about business. We're trying to get deals, the $1 trillion mark, although that seems unlikely. But of course, there are geopolitics that are going to creep in here. The situation in Gaza, the Gulf states will push him to come up with some sort of plan there for the Palestinians. The Iran deal as well. They're going to want some sort of solution there. But right now, as we're seeing the president a short time ago with the Crown Prince, he's strengthening ties to the region, and it's really about economic and business development rather than strategy, Mika.
This is the primal scream of a dying regime. Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. You're not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you try to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
It's Tuesday, 13 May, year of our Lord 2025. Okay, we're going to get into the geopolitics, talk about the pageantry, the businessmen, what the purpose of this. The great Jim Rickards, as only he can explain to you, is up on deck, going to join us momentarily. Got Dave Bratt to walk through, because this afternoon the huge markups in 3 big committees, particularly about Medicaid and about taxes, are going to take place. We're going to prep you for all of that. But I want to start. We're very lucky to have Andy Biggs for a few minutes here before he gets on other activities up on the Hill. So, Congressman Biggs, here's the thing. We're trying to break this whole thing down, the big, beautiful bill, both the cost side and the tax side. But let's go to cost first, because you've clarified something to me I think is quite important, and I believe the audience understand this. Senator Johnson's got an amazing piece in the Wall Street Journal, and we're trying to get Johnson on in Hawley's piece about Medicaid. But Johnson talks about, as we talk about on the show, the discretionary budget. You got to get here. You can't get a debt ceiling increase and then blow through it. And I keep saying, hey, we got to get off talking about the 10 years. But the 10-year does have a logic to it, in that the guys talking about 10 years are talking about some of the mandatory cuts. Walk me through right now your assessment, because the big, beautiful bill seems to me it's kind of slapped together. It's very hard to get your hands around. I don't see a lot of cuts coming out of here. I see a $2 trillion minimum deficit this fiscal year that ends on September 30th, and a back of an envelope, we're at 2.5 for next fiscal year. So the $4 trillion lift we get on the debt ceiling, I think we blow through before the 26 midterm. Congressman Biggs, you've been the biggest deficit hawk in Congress. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Steve. So when you take